Members of council, I will call this committee of the whole meeting for Wednesday, January 15th to order. Mr. Clerk, if you could conduct a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Electronic roll call is starting now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have quorum. Members of council, just a couple quick items. On behalf of the Durham Region's United Way campaign team, which is this year is being led by the Community Growth and Economic Development Department, I'm pleased to let you know that the region's 50th anniversary cookbook is now available for sale. The cookbook contains nearly 120 recipes from over 100 contributions from all regional departments. In addition to many staff contributions, there is a recipe in the book from every department head, and my own amazing chocolate chip cookie recipe is on page 93. Right beside Dr. Kyle's amazing carrot cake recipe on page 92. I expect you will all want at least one copy of this cookbook, and today is your lucky day. Commissioner Bridgman has a supply with him for you to pick up today, either at break or after the meeting. The cost is $20 per copy, and all proceeds go to the United Way. He will gladly accept cash, or if you want to pay by e-transfer, the address is unitedwaypayments@durham.ca. I want to thank you councillors for your kind support toward this important cause. And I do want to take the time to thank all of our staff that are involved with the United Way that do such a great job that benefits so many people within the region of Durham. People that we never see, people that truly need help, and the United Way is a great way to do that. The other thing I'd like to announce is in the back room on the table, there is a new 50th anniversary regional flag that it will be available. And I'd like all members of council and staff here today to take the opportunity just to sign it. We'll have it back here for council. And then when we get all the signatures on it, it will be framed as a permanent item recognizing that we were all here during the 50th anniversary of the region of Durham. There are no public statutory meetings today. We have a number of presentations. The first presentation is by Theresa Tan, Director of Community Engagement, East, Metrolinx, and Marie Chung, Director, Rapid Transit, sponsor, Metrolinx, and Joseph Ulrich, Director of Project Planning, Metrolinx. The topic is the Durham Scarborough Bus Transit item. It's not about the GO Train East. However, to our Metrolinx friends, we would be happy to host the rail team from Metrolinx someday to give us an update on everything that's going. So if you'd like to come down and join us, and whoever is leading the presentation.
They're virtual.
Oh, they're virtual. Thank you. Okay. So when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Henry, your worships, and regional councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on our preliminary design business case for the Durham Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit Project. I am Theresa Tran. I am the Director for Community Engagement in Durham, York, and Simcoe regions. And today with me, my colleague Joseph Ulrich, who is the Director for Regional Planning, and Anne-Marie Chung, who is our Director from our Rapid Transit Sponsors Office. Next page, please. I would like to begin our update with our land acknowledgement. Metrolinx acknowledges that we connect communities by building and operating transit within traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat people, for whom these lands continue to have great importance. Treaties between First Nations and governments cover these lands. The promises contained in these treaties remain relevant to today. Metrolinx and its employees are committed to understanding the history of these lands and continued impacts of colonization, and take responsibilities for actions to advance reconciliation. Metrolinx will continue to seek the knowledge, expertise, and experience of Indigenous partners, and commits to doing business in a manner that is built on a foundation of trust, respect, and collaboration. Next page, please. Today's update will provide an overview on the background and context for the preliminary design business case for the Durham-Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit project. We will also highlight the options considered, our key findings, and outline our next steps. And maybe with that, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Joseph.
Great, thank you, Teresa. Good morning. Again, my name is Joseph Ehrlich. I'm Director of Project Planning at Metrolinx, and I'm happy to walk you through the results of this preliminary design business case for the Durham-Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit project. Some context setting here. This is a 36-kilometer corridor along Highway 2 in Durham region and Ellesmere Road in the city of Toronto, connecting downtown Oshawa and Scarborough, or the future Scarborough Centre Station on Line 2 of the Scarborough Subway extension, going through 4 municipalities in Durham region, connecting a lot of important destinations on the way, as you can see on the diagram below. We had originally issued an initial business case in 2018, and this preliminary design business case takes the planning and design environmental work a step further, and I'm happy to share the key findings, results, and next steps. A key goal of this was to evaluate 3 investment options in order to assess alternative approaches to delivering a project. And I'll get through that on the next slide. This really helps us understand the key drivers and impacts to cost and benefits. I want to be very clear, this report does not make a recommendation on a preferred investment option, but explores different avenues to implementing the project and timing depending on prioritization of work, potential deferral of construction, and just broader timing. If we go to the next slide, you can see the options, which took the preferred alternative from the IBC, which was a combination of both center median and curbside BRT infrastructure. Center median BRT infrastructure is when the buses are running in the center lanes in the right-of-way on dedicated bus lanes, and so therefore there would be stops in the median of the roadway. Whereas curbside is when the bus lanes are at the outer curb, so the rightmost lane of the right-of-way, with stops along the curb where the sidewalk would be. So option 1 is the full BRT implementation, which looks at dedicated BRT infrastructure along nearly the entire length of the corridor, which would include 49 stops. We've designed this to a 30% preliminary design. Again, in options 2 and 3, we're looking at sort of different avenues for delivery and sort of to test how the benefits perform around this, and what sort of the real driver of benefits is on the project. So in option 2, we're looking at deferring high cost segments. So these would be segments with above average capital costs, such as areas where we'd need to rebuild or widen a bridge, widen roadways in areas where it would be more expensive to do so, where we'd need to build retaining walls or relocate utilities or have a larger amount of property takings. So in this option, we're looking at building 25 kilometers of BRT guideway, so about 10 kilometers less of the physical infrastructure than option 1, with 40 stops. And a big advantage of BRT over some other modes is that with BRT, you're able to build non-contiguous segments because buses can go in and out of mixed traffic. So it really allows for flexible infrastructure implementation. In option 3, it's a similar concept where we're looking at the level of traffic along the corridor, and the option looks to prioritize those segments that have worse traffic. So we would be deferring segments that would have level of service C or better without the BRT, where buses could travel at relatively free flow speed. So here we'd be looking at 27 kilometers of BRT guideway and 42 new BRT stops. The next slide shows key findings from the PDBC. The PDBC is posted on our website, so you can I think there will be a link to it on the next slide. But some of the key findings here is that this very much is a high demand corridor. And it definitely a high demand cross boundary corridor where people are making trips between municipalities and between the City of Toronto and Durham region. It's also a market that relies on transit all day. There are a couple of universities on the corridor that are big ridership generators. There are also a lot of essential workers that connect to destinations on the corridor as well. So it's not just a peak-oriented corridor. It's very much people using it for work, for leisure purposes, for educational purposes all day. The infrastructure being proposed will enable faster travel time along the corridor and make trips more reliable. The advantage of having the dedicated infrastructure in areas of high traffic allows for both the speed improvements as well as the reliability improvements. And it serves, again, multiple higher education institutions and high density population and jobs along the corridor. This will also enable support of existing and future growth, including 4,600 existing and planned affordable housing units within a 10-minute walk of a future DSBRT stop. This investment will also increase capacity and expand potential ridership along the corridor. Going from about 3,100 boardings during the peak hour in the morning up to 4,300 to 5,300 peak boardings, depending on the policy of open versus closed door, which I'll get to in a moment. The full implementations, that option one that showed the build out along the entire corridor, results in the most benefits due to the highest travel time savings, but does come at the highest capital cost. And so, there definitely be an interesting question around, deferring or prioritizing certain segments over others still allows for comparable levels of ridership and economic performance. And provides the opportunity to deliver this project with comparable performance for potentially less investment dollars. In all options, benefits can increase without additional infrastructure through an open door policy. And an open door policy would enable Durham Region Transit buses to pick up and drop off passengers within the City of Toronto, and that would allow additional capacity to be utilized on buses that are traveling at that 11-kilometer segment through the City of Toronto. I'm going to hand this over to my colleague Anne-Marie Chung to walk you through the next steps on the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. So, in conclusion, Metrolinx has now completed the Durham-Scarborough BRT planning and design stage, and it is marked by the completion of this PDBC. As you're aware, Durham Region has received funding to deliver core segments of the BRT and is leading the detailed design and construction of those segments, with a report by Durham staff later on in today's agenda. As it stands today, with the completion of the PDBC, there is no committed funding from the province to implement the remainder of the corridor. And as such, there are no further plans for Metrolinx in the construction and delivery of the remaining segments, unless directed otherwise. We do welcome municipalities to leverage the PDBC design and TPAP to seek further funding from various levels of government. And Metrolinx will continue to support Durham Region staff as it implements sections of this project. And now, on behalf of Metrolinx, I want to thank you for your time today. And I want to personally thank Durham Region staff, who we've worked closely with to advance the planning and design work. At this point, our team would be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you. We do have a few questions for you. First one is from Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the presenters. I think your last series of statements may well have answered my questions as to when. I am an Oshawa-based regional councillor, so I have two questions. One is you had 49 stops shown, the last one being Simcoe. And yet I understood that the plan originally was to bring the bus over to Mary Street up to Bond and all the way back to Scarborough. And then I heard that the plan was to take the BRT all the way across Simcoe to Ritson and go down to the new upcoming sometime GO station and then back up to Bond and then all the way back to Scarborough. So my first question is, would there be any further potential stops on the eastbound route? Apart from stopping at Simcoe, would there be another one potentially somewhere along the south side of King Street between Simcoe and Ritson, which is a fair distance? And secondly, apart from somebody picking up this service at the GO station at First Avenue, would there be a stop coming up Ritson for residents that wanted to therefore take the bus and take that route into Scarborough? So that'd be the first question.
Sure, I'll answer this. Thank you for the question.
Okay, I was looking at Ann, but she was looking rather hopeful elsewhere, so I guess it was over to you, Joseph.
Yeah. So we're really looking right now. The study's looking at the physical BRT infrastructure where we'd have bus lanes or median bus lanes. A big advantage of BRT type services and using buses is that they can stay on the corridor and they can go off the corridor as well to serve other destinations. And so I think this is something should the project be delivered further that you could partner with Durham Region Transit on sort of finding the right feeder access service to use the bus, the core segment of the busway.
So what I'm hearing then is, where's the current projected Metrolinx developed stop point eastbound? Maybe Anne Marie, we can look back at Joseph again for this one.
Yeah, so eastbound, the study corridor ends at Simcoe. But again, that doesn't mean that a bus would turn around at Simcoe necessarily. A bus could keep on using the existing road network to go further east if it's warranted.
So also part of the next steps in this is to look at just the service plans and the service integrations when the project advances. And I think that's a key part of it is the easterly connections as well as connections into the Bowmanville rail service extension.
So I guess what I'm also hearing here is, as it is right now, it's not going to go any further east than what, Ajax, without other municipalities coming to the front with some kind of funding from other levels of government to make this happen any further eastbound. Is that what I'm hearing?
In terms of infrastructure on the eastbound side, yes, Councillor.
So right now we have, without any further funding from other than Metrolinx, we're not going to see the BRT in Oshawa any day soon. Not even in the next, however. So it depends on funding from other levels of government. You have, Metrolinx has no plans to go beyond Ajax at this point, or wherever it is.
So, Councillor, the termination, at least for the DSBRT project, is still in downtown Oshawa in terms of the planned infrastructure that we've considered part of this project.
Okay, so I guess what I'm digging at here is, I have businesses in downtown Oshawa, which is in my ward as a city councillor,
Yeah.
who obviously have some hopes, but also concerns about removal of street parking, but also, access by potential customers and so forth. And they're asking me, Rick, when can you give us a date? So I guess that's basically what I'm asking you folks is when, if possible, when do you foresee this happening, provided there's levels of funding from other levels of government?
Yeah, I think at this point, this is really the contingent part. So our PDPC does assume construction timelines on an opening year, and that's purely for planning purposes. But the question around when really is a future decision for the province and or when funds become available.
Okay, so we have no even ballpark or inkling of when this might come through downtown Oshawa. I guess that's my bottom line question.
Mhm. We've made some planning assumptions, but at this point, the biggest if is the funding piece here.
Okay, I guess I can't go any further with that line of questioning. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pickles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our attendees in your presentation today. Couple questions. You went through some of the slides, and the one had the different options, and it had the mapping on it, and we went by that pretty quickly. There were some dotted lines on there, and I think that was to indicate the existing funded ICIP elements projects. So my understanding, and correct me if it's not correct, that the expectation is those projects are a go and they're likely to proceed this year, although they're subject to maybe some Indigenous consultation. Can you give me a better idea of whether those are a go and whether we'll see shovels in the ground?
Yeah, I could speak to that, or at least I know the item will be spoken to in detail by Durham Region staff, but there are sections from the Pickering and Ajax side that are assumed to assumed construction is to commence in 2025 into 2026.
Okay. And does Metrolinx have an ongoing role with those projects, or has your role ended with those, and those are to be undertaken by the region solely?
Well, we expect some level of working with each other, seeing that we work very closely with the entire planning and design stage. We have identified areas of synergy, so we do understand we're still co-proponents in the TPAP itself. And in part of the TPAP requirements, there are the Indigenous engagements relationship that we've discussed, as well as just construction and design assumptions that we made in the PDBC. So we do expect some level of synergies as the Durham region staff advances those segments, but they are mostly led by the Durham region team itself.
Okay. And I understand there's a Indigenous consultation element that has yet to be completed. I assume it's ongoing. Does Metrolinx of the province have any role in that, or are we doing it on our own?
So at this point, we are the Crown agency, so we do recognize that we are responsible in part for the Indigenous engagements. Now we recognize as it transfers into delivery and construction, and as the proponent to deliver it, you do have as well ISIP requirements to lead the Indigenous engagement. Now we do recognize that as a BRT as a whole, and there are TPAP commitments that are segment wide, that we'll need to continue working with each other as we advance certain conversations with Indigenous nations.
Okay, thanks. When your last comments was that your role on this project has ended unless directed otherwise. So just curious about the directed otherwise. Where does the directed otherwise come from if you're continuing to be involved? Would that be from the province?
Yes, that's correct, David. Councillor. So it would be from the province. We recognize that back in 2015, this project was part of the RTP, and the funding to advance planning and design work was part of the larger ask by the Next Wave program of projects to investigate. With that in mind, we have now completed our mandate on that part. So we recognize we've taken this project to the point of procurement readiness. And given that there is no other funding available for advancing the segments, we have no further role until, again, if and when funding is made available.
Okay. So just so I understand, so you have no ongoing role in advancing the other segments because the other segments aren't going ahead because you don't have direction from the province and or funding. So if you had direction from the province and funding, then those other elements that are not as yet advancing, presumably you could get direction to advance them.
That is an option.
Okay. In your dealings with the provincial government, they're advancing some transit projects we're well aware of, the Eglinton line and the Ontario line. Well, the Eglinton one, I guess, predates a couple governments. But so the province has some transit projects they are advancing. You're just saying that the one here in Durham isn't advancing at this time. You don't have that direction.
That's correct.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have an opportunity coming up, a couple opportunities, Mr. Chair, to advance those. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 7 years ago, a sign went up the corner of Westney and 2 saying that the BRT was coming to Ajax. Not one of our staff were included in any of that conversation. And so I find it very interesting that arbitrarily, Metrolinx can make decisions in a municipality without actually coming in and saying, this is what we'd like to do. So we started a number of conversations with Metrolinx and Durham Region. And now, at the time, 7 years ago, when we got our grant, and Durham said, we'll take it over, that would cover the entire project. 7 years later, the cost of everything has gone up, and it doesn't cover the cost of everything. And I understand why Ajax is getting it. I understand why Pickering is getting it. We have the road space. It's probably the least invasive to most of the other municipalities. But I find it so insulting now that you come, and I realize you're the bearer of bad news, but I find it insulting that you say, we're not giving you any money. Good luck with all that. Try and find some other money to finish it up. So I don't really have a question as much as I have spent 7 years trying to convince my community that this is a good thing. And so they don't even understand it. And now it's not even going to be completed. So I'm sorry. Thank you for the latitude. I just find it insulting.
Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try for a question on this. Thank you. I'm just looking for some clarity in terms of the presentation. I mean, I'm going to say I'm relatively new here because I haven't been here for 7 years, so I don't exactly know this project. But when I look at slide 4, it shows a linear map of stops. And it appears that the Durham-Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit project starts in the east or west, whichever way you want to go, and it has several stops in Toronto. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so when I go down to slide 7, it states that Durham Region has received Investing in Canada infrastructure funding for delivery of core segments and will be leading the detailed design, planning, and construction of those segments. Does that include those segments in the City of Toronto?
It does not.
Sorry, so then who is doing the segments in the City of Toronto, and where is that funding coming from?
So currently, right now, in the City of Toronto, those segments still remain part of the unfunded portions of the project.
So let's say we were to convince everybody around the table here to fund all the Durham sections. Where does that leave us into Toronto?
So right now we are working with the City of Toronto staff to coordinate and as well just share the findings of the PDBC to inform next steps and perhaps advance or look for opportunities to advance those segments as well.
Sorry, I'm just looking for clarity because I thought you were going to have no further involvement.
Yeah, well, we are currently with the PDBC counselor working with everyone with the results to share the evidence behind the project. And as Metrolinx, we do recognize this as a key transit project to inform decision making. And I do want to make sure there is a difference here from at least the Metrolinx perspective of developing the PDBC to inform that process.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to inform decision-making in terms of the project moving forward, but not inform decision-making in terms of funding, planning, and constructing the project.
Well, right now we are trying to use this PDBC and we are welcoming municipalities to use this PDBC at this point in time to try to seek funding.
Okay, so just for one last point of clarity, should Durham decide to fund this project in its entirety at the boundary of the city of Toronto, we don't know what will happen at that boundary, therefore over to Scarborough Town Centre.
Well, it'd be working with the city of Toronto themselves as well. We've been working collectively as a group because we recognize the connectivity is important for the Durham buses into Toronto, and that's demonstrated in the PDBC.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Okay, members of council, further questions? So there are no more questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 4.2. Bill Holmes, General Manager of Durham Region Transit, David Dunn, Director, Transportation and Field Services, Mike Deperine, Senior Consultant, SCJ Alliance, Stephen Dale, Principal, SCJ Alliance, and Patrick Miller, Associate Director of Steer Group on the Simcoe Street Rapid Transit. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Chair, councilors, CEO Baxter Trahair, guests, and staff here today. I'm really excited to be here as part of this presentation to talk about the Simcoe Rapid Transit Corridor. You may recall that we've been talking about this rapid transit corridor on Simcoe as far back as 2017 as part of the Durham Transportation Master Plan. As part of the 2018 MTO and Metrolinx Regional Transportation Plan to 2041, and as recently as last year with the adoption of Envision Durham. You can also recall back almost 2 years ago now, March of 2023, where we adopted the 10-year transit service and financing strategy as a way to enhance our local transit service by over 120% by 2032. As well as our frequency and reliability, which is really critical to improving our transit modal share. At that point as well, we recognized that the level of transit service in Durham was last amongst our comparator and competitive agencies. And that commitment of that investment would really move us forward in terms of being more competitive in terms of the transportation network. And we're starting to see the impact of the 2024 record level of investment in revenue services. Along with other factors, of course. We released a 20% ridership increase over previous record levels from 2019. And investment into the revenue services will increase ridership year over year, but truly realizing the benefits. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. Truly realizing these benefits that transit can provide to our residents, our businesses, our community, will become a reality when more rapid transit solutions are available to support more residents as they're traveling to work, to school, cultural and community events, and other key destinations. We heard in the previous presentation of the potential that the DSBRT has in ridership growth, particularly along that Highway 2 corridor. The Simcoe corridor simply is the busiest corridor within the DRT network. Well over 20% of ridership rides along that corridor. And they're coming from places across the region and beyond. There are full buses going across that municipal border. And those students, and there's students going to the universities, there's employees going to businesses across the region, and they're looking for that reliability to get to where they need to go. So I'm really excited that rapid transit on the Simcoe corridor is on our radar. We're taking that first step. And as we all know, that any convenient and reliable transit network needs to be where the people are in terms of where they're traveling to. So with that, I'll pass it over to David. I'm really excited to hear more about where we're at.
Bill? So through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Durham received $6.4 million in funding, with the region's share of that being $1.7 million, to evaluate and study rapid transit priority along the Simcoe Street corridor in Oshawa, including the completion of a transit project assessment process, or TPAP study. in line with Metrolink's 2041 Regional Transportation Plan, where Simcoe Street is identified as a BRT or LRT corridor, and the region's Transportation Master Plan, which identifies removing 2 existing general traffic lanes for dedicated bus-only lanes, extending from the 407 to the proposed Central Oshawa GO Station. We initiated a visioning, feasibility, and initial business case study in September of 2022, seeking public input to identify an overall vision for rapid transit on Simcoe Street. The study utilizes a 2051 time horizon to ensure that the projects account for future growth. Based on comments we heard at the first Public Information Center, or PIC, the project limits were extended south to Lakeview Park. So why Simcoe Street? Within 1 kilometer of Simcoe Street are 42% of Oshawa's population and 51% of its jobs, offering a significant opportunity to connect people to employment and essential services. The region's health department has identified 5 priority neighborhoods on or near Simcoe Street corridor. Priority neighborhoods are areas that experience higher unemployment, lower household incomes, and greater health challenges than other parts of the region. Fast, frequent, and reliable transit is essential to improving mobility options in these communities, especially for those unable or unwilling to rely on personal vehicles. Accessible, frequent transit removes barriers, fostering social inclusion and economic participation. Reliable service supports access to education, employment, and healthcare, while improving quality of life by reducing isolation, promoting equity, and encouraging healthier lifestyles. A rapid transit system would also create additional housing opportunities along the corridor, including options for students attending the 3 post-secondary institutions. One of the key objectives of rapid transit is to connect people to destinations. The Simcoe Street corridor features numerous significant destinations and proposed high-density developments, including Ontario Tech, Durham College, Lakeridge Health, Trent University, and the Winfields Regional Center. It also encompasses various proposed intensification areas such as Taunton Road area, the Central Oshawa Major Transit Station area, or MTSA, and downtown Oshawa. Simcoe Street is the only proposed north-south rapid transit corridor in the region, providing a vital connection to other higher-order transit corridors, including the future 407 Transitway and the Taunton Road Priority Bus Corridor. The Simcoe Street Rapid Transit System is a critical component of the proposed Highway 2 Durham-Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit project, as it will drive higher ridership levels on both routes and play a pivotal role in supporting the extension of the DSBRT into Clarington. Additionally, Simcoe Street Rapid Transit is a key component of the Bowmanville GO extension and has already been factored into the planning and delivery of the extension in 2 significant ways. First, by supporting ridership levels for the GO service, as rapid transit service on Simcoe Street adds to the overall ridership. And second, by reducing parking requirements at the Central Oshawa GO Station, helping minimize the need for costly and space-intensive parking structures. All of these factors make Simcoe Street an ideal rapid transit route today, just as it was in 1895 when the electric Oshawa Railway was first introduced along the corridor. The region has conducted 4 rounds of PICs between September 2022 and November of 2023 at various locations along the Simcoe Street corridor. To promote these events, we implemented an extensive communication strategy. As a result, over 500 people attended the in-person sessions. The study website received more than 7,000 unique visitors, and over 400 surveys were completed. For a transit or capital project study, this level of public involvement is impressive. Now into the specific rapid transit options that were explored. The at-grade options we looked at included bus rapid transit, or BRT, and light rail transit, LRT, both under a 4-lane configuration where we would convert 2 existing general purpose traffic lanes to dedicated transit lanes, consistent with the TMP. After hearing the comments from PIC number 1, and knowing there would likely be significant property and congestion impacts from both BRT and LRT, we wanted to evaluate alternative options where we could maintain the existing traffic lanes and still provide a fast, frequent, and reliable transit service. This is where we included the aerial transit solutions of aerial cable car transit, or ACCT, and a monorail. We also explored the options of subway and high-frequency bus service, improving upon the existing service, but still operating buses in mixed traffic. Based on an evaluation using guiding principles, the LRT, monorail, subway, and high-frequency bus service were eliminated as potential options. The BRT and ACCT options were carried forward to a feasibility study. In addition to the technology comparison, we also explored utilizing other routes, such as Thornton Road and Ritson Road, for service improvements. Our findings indicate an overall increase in both capital and maintenance costs, a potential decrease in the overall ridership if improvements come at the expense of a reduced service on Simcoe Street, and it only has the potential to service a small portion of the Simcoe Street ridership, as key destinations are predominantly located along the Simcoe Street corridor. Based on completed surveys and feedback received at the PICs, the comments shown here represent the most common themes, ranked from top to bottom. The most frequent comment was the need to improve transit service on Simcoe Street. Additionally, many respondents highlighted the necessity of rapid transit to accommodate population growth along the corridor. There was also greater support for BRT and ACCT options compared to not providing rapid transit and just operating high-frequency buses and mixed traffic. The top three concerns that we heard in order were disruptions caused by construction, property impacts, and congestion and infiltration. To address this, we have evaluated each proposed option against these concerns, and we'll get to it later in the presentation. For the remaining privacy concern, we believe there are effective mitigation strategies that can be implemented regardless of the option selected. Based on the feasibility study, property impacts were assessed, as this was a key concern that was raised. The two drawings illustrate property impacts for both options: the cable car system on top and the BRT system on bottom. The areas in red indicate the property requirements for the right-of-way, as well as any full property acquisitions needed where existing buildings are impacted. While these drawings focus on the intersection of Simcoe and Glover, similar impacts can be observed along the rest of the corridor. As shown, the property impacts for the BRT system, even where we're taking away an existing lane, are significantly greater than those for the cable car system. Simcoe Street is a busy road today. By 2051, without rapid transit, traffic volumes along the corridor are expected to near double, making existing congestion and infiltration problems significantly worse. Under the BRT scenario, the removal of an existing mixed traffic lane would lead to increased congestion on all streets that are highlighted in red in the drawing on the left, demonstrating the substantial impact of reducing a lane of traffic. Under an ACCT system, 2051 traffic volumes are projected to decrease as a greater percentage of people shift away from car usage, all while maintaining the existing traffic lanes. We also heard public concerns about the impact of construction. BRT would take approximately 10 years to complete, and due to the narrow right-of-way between Conlin Road and the one-way pairs, each section would require a full road closure during construction. In contrast, the ACCT system would take around 6 to 7 years to construct, with only localized closures during construction of the station platforms. Elsewhere, impacts would be minimal since most of the equipment would be manufactured off-site. We know the key to getting more people out of their cars and into transit is to provide a fast, frequent, and reliable transit service. With that in mind, looking at the base case scenario of improving service levels on Simcoe Street in mixed traffic to align with that of a high-frequency bus route, we can generate a demand of approximately 4.4 million riders per year. However, while this is an improvement, buses operating in mixed traffic are still subject to delays caused by congestion, which impacts both speed and reliability, thus limiting the number of riders willing to take transit. The BRT addresses these challenges by dedicating lanes exclusively to buses. With dedicated lanes, buses are no longer delayed by congestion, which leads to improved travel speeds and significantly enhanced reliability. This improvement more than doubles the ridership demand, with projections reaching approximately 8.9 million riders per year. The ACCT option features cabins arriving every 26 seconds during peak periods and every minute during off-peak periods. As the cable cars are elevated above roadways, they are entirely separated from congestion and traffic signals, ensuring uninterrupted service and unmatched reliability. This option achieves the highest ridership demand projections, further increasing potential ridership to approximately 9.7 million riders per year. In looking at the capital cost comparison of the various transit options, to improve transit service along Simcoe Street to a high-frequency level of service costs approximately $100 million. The BRT option would be approximately $800 million, and the ACCT option is just under $1.1 billion. However, there are savings since we'd be able to reduce our bus fleet or reallocate the buses to other routes. Factoring in these savings, the cost of the ACCT is approximately $1 billion. For comparison, the cost of implementing other standard rapid transit options on Simcoe Street would be approximately $5 billion for an LRT and $12 billion for a subway. Like almost all transit infrastructure in the province, whether it be the acquisition of buses, the construction of maintenance facilities, or the building of rapid transit, the expectation is that senior government funding is required to advance any of these options. We know that we don't provide transit for profit, as transit generally operates at a loss. Instead, we provide transit to promote social equity by offering mobility options for those who are unable or unwilling to drive, and support environmental sustainability by reducing emissions and traffic congestion. In comparing high-level revenue numbers, if we only look at fare revenue and don't include advertising revenue or a tourism surcharge, we have revenues of $13.6 million for a high-frequency bus service, $27.6 million for a BRT, and $30.1 million for an ACCT system. Buses are expensive to operate and maintain, and as our roads see continually greater congestion, operating costs will continue to escalate just to deliver the same level of service. When we look at the operating and maintenance costs for both the high-frequency bus and BRT options, yearly costs are $22.9 million and $29.8 million respectively. The ACCT option, in comparison, has a lower yearly O&M cost at approximately $16.3 million. When we subtract O&M costs from revenue, we have an annual net loss of $9.3 million for high-frequency buses, a net loss of $2.2 million per year for BRT, and we see a profit of $13.8 million for the ACCT option. Comparing the totals over the 60-year project lifecycle, if we don't include discount rates or interest and maintain everything in 2024 dollars, the total net loss for operating a high-frequency bus service is around $558 million. The BRT has a net loss of approximately $132 million, and the ACCT option has a net profit of $828 million. When we factor in senior government funding for capital construction component, these initial high-level estimates suggest there's potential for the ACCT to actually make a profit, which rarely happens in public transit systems. So as Bill noted earlier, there are additional benefits to providing rapid transit along key corridors. We know that rapid transit is a catalyst for economic development. Along this corridor, we expect to see that for every dollar invested, there would be an economic spin-off of approximately $2.08. This equates to additional development of $2.3 billion for the ACCT option and $1.5 billion for the BRT option. Rapid transit also generates higher transit demand, allowing developments along the corridor to reduce the number of parking spaces they provide. With underground parking costs now exceeding $100,000 per spot, this translates into significant savings in construction costs. These reduced costs encourage new developments and enable developers to pass along some of the savings to offer more affordable housing options. As discussed earlier, implementing rapid transit increases transit ridership compared to high-frequency buses operating in mixed traffic. Specifically, it generates an additional 4.6 million riders per year for the BRT option and an additional 5.4 million riders per year for the ACCT option. By shifting a greater number of trips from automobiles to transit, we anticipate a reduction in auto collisions involving injury or death by approximately 11 incidents annually for the ACCT option and 2 incidents annually for the BRT option. We would also anticipate a decrease in vehicle kilometers traveled per year by 35.4 million kilometers for the ACCT option and 6.8 million kilometers for the BRT option. And the corresponding environmental benefit to this, a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of 81,400 tons per year for the ACCT option and 15,700 tons per year for the BRT option. Considering the minimal property impacts, reduced congestion, decreased construction disruptions, increased ridership potential, and significant economic, and core benefits, we believe there's a strong potential for the aerial cable car transit technology along Simcoe Street. As such, recommend conducting further studies on the ACCT option to explore viability and benefits in greater depth. I'll now turn it over to Stephen and Mike from SCJ to discuss some of the key benefits of the ACCT, along with providing examples of where comparable systems have been implemented elsewhere.
Thanks, David. I'll start with some of the benefits of the ACCT systems. There are thousands of these systems operating worldwide. Most of them are in recreational scenarios, more commonly seen as ski lifts as sort of starters. But as the high reliability, the capacities, the availability, and the low construction impact is realized, there's quite a bit more adoption in urban scenarios. My friend Stephen will talk specifically about some of those items in a few minutes here. They're easily integrated into urban environments, in part because their infrastructure is so much smaller than other linear infrastructure. It's basically stations, towers, and cables rather than very large rights-of-way and heavy infrastructure there. The systems are entirely accessible. They meet typical accessibility standards. You can see from the photos up above that the cabins integrate with the station platform with no gap, no step, so they're nice level boarding. These systems can be stopped so that somebody can board, and of course the cabins, as you can see in some of those photos, will accommodate mobility devices, bikes, strollers, and other kinds of mobility challenged scenarios. There we go. Some of the additional benefits of the aerial cable cars, they are continuously circulating systems, which, as David pointed out, there's a little less than half a minute to a minute in the off-peak periods between cabins, which means that there's always a cabin coming. It's always available, so you don't have to operate on a schedule if you're trying to use it for transit. That's extremely convenient for the user because you don't have to worry about what if I miss that last bus or what if I miss the next bus. They are obviously, from the ski resort scenario, they're obviously known for being weather robust. They operate in cold environments, they operate in wind, all of those things that might be concerns in an urban environment where we are. These photos present some examples of station types that might be useful for either over or in a roadway. I'll speak to a couple of them in particular, but these are just examples of what does a station, or could a station look like physically. And you can see this, in this case, we've got basically a terminal where the cabins come in, and then the infrastructure for passengers to offload or get off down to the street or to integrate into some other mode of transit, as the case may be. And I'll talk specifically about two scenarios that we talked about, what the system could look like. We went through and did an analysis on each of the locations proposed. We've selected two of them here to talk specifically to. This is what Lake Ridge Health Station could look like. It's not a full design, obviously, but basically in this scenario, we have access to both sides of the street. So each side of Simcoe has elevators and stairs so that people can access to the side. All of the interesting activity of boarding the system and being off and on the cabins happens over the street at an elevated level with meeting minimum clearances required above the street. And so by doing that, people can get up and on from whichever side of the street they're coming from. A slightly different scenario is at Bond Station, where the environment and the context are a little bit more restrictive. At Bond Station, the access is primarily from one side of the street, or actually entirely from one side of the street. So what we've done is we proposed to have a mezzanine level so that people come up and can cross underneath the system, because with the 30 seconds or so and a minute headways between cars, you don't want people crossing in front of the line of the cabins. So we cross underneath the cabins and then choose whichever side you want to go up onto. And in this case, we've also arranged it so that it connects to the proposed urban park. And we've done some things with the columns to minimize their impact on the locality, on the parking and so on there because of the restricted space and knowing that that environment has a lot more interesting contextual restrictions there. So we modeled our analysis through this on what's known as a tri-line. That's a particular system of cable cars. There's obviously a few different options. We modeled our analysis on this, which is approximately a 20-person cabin with lots and lots of glazing on it or glass so that you can look around and see things. Because of the privacy concern, well, I'll show you some of the privacy concern solutions in a second here, but it's about 20 passenger cabins. We used a medium-sized cabin so that we're able to get higher capacities and a good transportation feel without having to have infrastructure that really overwhelms the environment. And with regards to some of the visibility and privacy concerns, the seating can be arranged, one, so that you can point, so that all the people are sort of pointing towards the middle and away from looking into other properties. But also there are technical solutions. For example, on the right there, the sort of blurred picture on the bottom is taken from inside one of the cabins where the glass is made to be opaque in certain locations. And that can be done automatically by geofencing, where you just say, okay, in this area, we don't want people to be able to look out, so you frost the glass, nobody can see out, or in for that matter, through that section, and then you are able to have the privacy that you need to. That is in use that is a place called Brest in France. That's in consideration in a lot of other systems that are being planned at this time. And I think and Stephen can talk to some of those other possibilities or possible implementations. I just said.
Thanks a lot, Mike, and thank you, councilors, for having us here. This map here is a little bit out of date. It is existing in planned urban ACCT systems around the world. What's interesting about this map is that if I was coming to you 20 years ago, this map would be completely empty. There would be one dot on it, and that would be in Medellin, Colombia. Medellin, Colombia was the first city in the world to ever implement a gondola system fully integrated into their public transit system. And it was wildly successful to the point now where Medellin, Colombia, I believe, has 8 systems in the city, and it's spread throughout Latin America, as you can see, beginning to catch on in Asia, and we're increasingly seeing interest and uptake in Europe and North America. And one of the real reasons that we feel this has been happening, you know, we've talked in this conversation today about the need for reliable and frequent transit service. That's what gets people out of their cars and into transit, is frequent, reliable wait times. And on this system, we're talking about a 20-person vehicle coming every 26 seconds. That's the equivalent of a city bus every minute. And the thing about a cable car is, I'm not going to get too technical for you, but we've all experienced buses or streetcars where bunching occurs, you know, where 3, 4, 5 suddenly come all at one time. That's inherent in the technology. It's just the way that it works. I'm not going to get into the technical reasons for why it happens, but it always happens. The thing about a cable car is it is technically impossible for bunching to occur. If bunching occurs on a cable car, the whole system needs to shut down. It means something has cataclysmically gone wrong. And it doesn't happen with cable cars because you're literally fixed to the cable. It fixes where the vehicles are. So the vehicles are always coming every 26 seconds. And that for a transit user is the single most important thing: frequent, reliable wait times. This system here, I'm just going to run through a few systems that exist in the world. This is the Roosevelt Island Tramway in New York City. It was opened in 1976. It's a slightly different technology than what we're talking about here. It's an aerial tram. I'm not going to get into what that means. My colleague here, Mike, was actually responsible for the rebuild of this system in 2010. This system operates 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day, and moves millions of people per year. Probably most interestingly is during Hurricane Sandy, I believe that was 2008, I was actually in New York City when Hurricane Sandy hit. A little known story that people don't realize is that the first piece of transit infrastructure that was operational after Hurricane Sandy blew out was the tram, because it's designed for some of the harshest climates on Earth, right? When you're not dealing with mixed traffic, when you're above grade, when you're not underground, things like water and flooding doesn't impact you. 41 hours after Hurricane Sandy blew out, this system was operational while the rest of the MTA was crippled. This is a system in La Paz, Bolivia. This is called the Mi Teleférico. This is a system that was built in roughly 5 years' time. It's still being expanded right now, but at the time of opening, they opened roughly 24 stations and about 30 kilometers of cable car systems. It was the first city on Earth to actually design their entire fixed-link transit system around cable cars, and it's been wildly successful. They move up to 500,000 people per day on this system, and they built it all for $500 million. Now, of course, it's a slightly different situation. It's Latin America versus Canada. You know, you can't build 30 kilometers of cable cars in Canada for $500 million, but it's still an important reference point. And one thing that I want to point out here is that everyone often says, well, cable cars, those are great for mountains, nowhere else, right? And of course, La Paz has tons of mountains, but the photos that we've chosen to show you here are flat parts of La Paz, because there's plenty of flat parts of La Paz. And you'll see here, the traffic median in the upper left corner is very, very similar to what we're talking about in Oshawa along Simcoe Street. Wide boulevard with a traffic median in the middle. That's about as ideal an urban environment as you want for a cable car system. And lastly, this is the Mexicable in Mexico City. This is interesting because it's both actually, Mexico City is so large, parts of Mexico City are in the state of Mexico and parts of it are in Mexico City proper. Not so very different from a city like the GTA where we have, you know, your core city of Toronto and then you have your outlying regions and that. What's interesting about this is that both the city of Mexico City and the state of Mexico has both built cable cars in Mexico City. This was the first one. This was the Mexicable. The state of Mexico has since built a second one, while in parallel, the city of Mexico itself has already built 3 cable car systems with a plan for 4. We don't tend in city planning and urban transit to build more of things that don't work. And Mexico City is a great example of a city that said, let's try this, it worked, let's build more of them. And lastly, just a few other systems. Paris, France is building one, so that you don't think this is purely a Latin American phenomenon. A city like Paris is building this. This is due to open at the end of 2025, perhaps 2026. We're also working, Mike in particular is working very carefully on a project in Los Angeles, California that's working its way through the planning process right now. And a little closer to home on the other side of Canada in Burnaby, British Columbia, they're building they're working towards opening a system in a few years up there. That is more to deal with a mountain environment, but nevertheless, it does show that we are bringing this system along. I think the point I'm trying to make here is that a lot of people look at this technology and they think, well, it's new, might be new to this environment, might be new to Toronto, might be new to Oshawa, but it isn't new to the world. The 2 main suppliers of this technology actually date from the 1880s. That's almost 150 years ago. And the reality is the first motorized bus opened in France in 1906. So this technology literally predates the bus. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. So a brief summary of why we're recommending further study of the ACCT option versus not implementing any rapid transit along the Simcoe Street corridor and just improving service in mixed traffic. The ACCT option provides far greater benefits as it delivers mobility equity and improves access for priority neighborhoods. It more than doubles ridership, promoting sustainable transportation. It drives economic growth, reducing development costs, and encourages affordability. It significantly reduces environmental impacts, aligning with the region's sustainability goals. And it ensures stronger financial sustainability through higher revenues and lower operating costs. We've reached a point where we believe there's potential for the aerial cable car transit option technology due to its limited direct impacts on property, ability to reduce traffic congestion, minimal construction disruptions, and the positive financial impact from the system's operations. We are asking for Council's endorsement not to implement this technology, but to simply study the ACCT further. This would allow us to gain a better understanding of how this technology would integrate into the Simcoe Street built environment, evaluate its viability, and further verify high-level financial estimates that have been prepared to date. Based on this, we are recommending that aerial cable car transit option proceed to further study through an impact assessment, or IA, and the Transit Project Assessment Process, or TPAP. If Council agrees to endorse this strategy, following the commencement of the IA and TPAP, we will continue to engage with Oshawa and regional councils, staff, stakeholders, and public through public information sessions, steering committees, and council updates. We fully understand and anticipate skepticism around this technology, as it's just beginning to be considered as a mass transit solution here in Canada. To address this, we are planning a robust educational campaign to provide a deeper understanding and to better inform and educate council, stakeholders, and the public. Upon completing an IA and TPAP, regional staff will evaluate the study findings against the region's strategic priorities. Accordingly, staff will then report back to council with a go, no-go decision or recommendation late in 2027 on whether to advance the project, and if so, outline next steps, including the pursuit of senior government funding and private partnerships. Thank you. This is the end of our presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We have a number of questions for you. First is Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation this morning. Number of questions, so I'll get right to them. It was stated that there's a very high east-west volume of people coming to Simcoe Street, and for various reasons, notably the post-secondary institutions we have, both downtown and uptown, and also place of employment. There's also mentioned that this is where the people are, but I might suggest it's also where the people come to. So my first question to you is, how far, you mentioned 1 kilometer of Simcoe Street, how far east of Simcoe Street is 1 kilometer? Are you able to determine that or be able to make that statement at this time? Where would we be if we were 1 kilometer east of Simcoe?
You would be, so through the chair, it's approximately just, say, shy of Ritson Road would be the type of distance away.
Okay, thank you. Some discussions I've had on this have said that the busiest segment of Simcoe is between Adelaide and Roslyn. I would suggest it is at Adelaide and Roslyn. So therefore, what I'm suggesting to you is, in the meantime, where is your position on the potential of running a pilot project that we run buses up Ritson on a service level comparable to Simcoe to, if you will, provide an alternative for those many people that live within 1 kilometer of Simcoe, but also the many students and employees who come from the east, across King, across Adelaide, across Roslyn, across Taunton, and if you will, intercept them at Ritson and provide a service level where they don't have to wait 2, 3, and even 4 buses to get a standing room spot on a Simcoe bus. What's the feeling about providing a pilot project to see whether that would alleviate some of the volume on the Simcoe Street bus?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll defer to General Manager Holmes to answer that question.
And you knew this was coming, so this is not a surprise question. Yeah.
Through the chair, we are, as part of our priorities for this year, we are developing our next 5-year transit strategy. And as part of that strategy, we will be looking at alternative ways, such as the suggestion you have identified, and evaluating that to see if it's realistic and if it would achieve the desirable outcomes there. So we will be reviewing that as part of this year. We'll be presenting in the fall for adoption of our next year's strategy, and we'll provide that specific feedback at that point about the opportunity and if it is something that we would recommend pursuing.
Thank you. The other thing is we are anticipating at some point, hopefully in my lifetime, the opening of the GO stations at Thornton Woods and First Avenue. And I'm wondering whether or not a bus could be run from Thornton Woods, same thing, up to the campus and back. So just something to keep in mind. The other thing I wondered is what kind of review has been considered for what I'd like to plan for Oshawa, which is an active transportation spine down Mary Street, such that people now from the north and northeast of Oshawa can come across Beatrice, come down Mary, come across Hillcroft to Mary, and come all the way downtown and further that right down to where the GO station will be and even down to the lake. So what kind of consideration has been given to augmenting such an active transportation spine that would alleviate traffic onto the Simcoe bus, including the e-scooter program?
So through the chair, so as part of this study, we've only really looked at the Simcoe Street corridor itself and looked at improving the active transportation component from the existing terminus of the multi-use path that is north of Taunton Road to Taunton Road as per the regional cycling plan. And that's where we've taken our guidance from. So any improvements outside of that would need to be done through Oshawa staff and through
Correct.
future improvements to the regional cycling plan.
Correct, and that's where I was, sometimes an integration of sources of information can illustrate or illuminate the situation. What I'm concerned about with the other modes, apart from the gondola system, is that we're not going to reduce too much traffic coming from the north down Simcoe. There's only one way into Oshawa, that's down Simcoe. All those people from, Scugog area and beyond, if they're going to have to drive. There isn't really a bus that runs down there regularly. So therefore, those traffic volumes aren't really going to come down much. So the other question I had was, if you're going to go to 9.7 million, what happens if you have lineups in these stations? And where do you handle the volume of people that will be lining up to take something that goes every 26 seconds? So 40 people a minute, basically. Where would they line up? Would they be waiting for an elevator to go up? Would they be lined up on the pavement? Where would the volume of people line up to take this service?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. I'll turn it over to Stephen to be able to talk about what's being done in other places where this
Thank
is
you.
implemented.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Generally speaking, what we see is that due to the frequency of the vehicles coming, you're actually able to void a queue very, very quickly. We're talking about here at 26 seconds, we're talking about having a system that can roughly move 2,400 people per hour per direction. So that's almost 5,000 people in both directions. So generally speaking, we won't see much of a queue occur. When we do see a queue occur, there's going to be plenty of space on the platforms such that the platforms can accommodate those queues. So you're not going to have people spilling out onto the streets. Yes, there's going to be elevators. Those are primarily going to be for accessibility issues, and there is going to be a stairwell. But especially in the winter where water, slush, ice, that kind of thing, you're not going to want to see people queuing in the stairwell. So you're going to make sure that people are queuing in the stations in a climate-controlled environment.
Okay, thank you. I have a number of colleagues who also have questions, and I'll curtail it there and give my colleagues a chance. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. So the presenters mentioned there's going to be a lot of doubters, and I absolutely was one of them reading this report. But I think I've been somewhat converted. So just a few questions. In the case of an emergency stop, what is the protocol? Do we have to call the fire department to get a giant ladder? Like, what happens if there's an emergency at one of the gondolas?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. I'll turn it over to Mike to be able to provide an answer to that one.
So the system has a number of, and I don't want to get too technical here, but the system has would typically have a number of redundancies built into it, so that the basic premise is move the cabins and get people back to the stations so that they can exit, even if it means abnormal operations of the system in the cabin, so that you can bring it back to the station to get people out. There is a sort of last resort operation where you can remove people vertically from the cabins, but today's modern systems avoid that entirely as a practical matter. So you bring the cabins back to the station to get people out.
When looking at the comparators like Columbia, United States, Manhattan, how often does that happen where there was an emergency? And were they able to kind of execute as planned?
So I won't speak to, for example, Columbia, because the data to me in that location is a little more difficult to understand. But I've gone through a sort of detailed analysis through one of the systems in Colorado, And over, I think it was about 25 years, give or take, with 3 different systems operating, they had, I think it was about 2 instances, it might have been 3, where they actually removed people vertically from the cabins. Over,
Okay.
I think they operate in the order of 6,000 hours a year on those systems. So whatever that.
What is the maintenance schedule like for gondolas? So, you know, like I know at Disney World, they have a really smaller version of this, and that goes down about 2, 3 times a year for maintenance. What about if we were to do our version, what would that be?
So there would be program maintenance. Most of the maintenance would happen after hours. Program maintenance, there's a few things that do need to be done, and you would schedule that in advance, schedule additional service on probably multi-year intervals.
Okay. And then, you know, I mean, have to ask the question. And it's comparable because, you know, people have died on buses before as a result of buses. Has there been any fatalities as a result of riding an ACCT?
Do you mean in the cabins? Is that what you mean?
As a relation to riding an ACCT, has there been any fatalities as a result of
There
the
have been
ACCT?
fatal incidences. They are very few. There was actually a statistical work done where it was found that they are 5 times, statistically this is, 5 times safer than elevators, which was
Right.
for me a very eye-opening.
Just to add to that, in North America, and again, we have tons of gondolas everywhere in terms of ski resorts and that sort of thing. There's not been a fatality in North America since the 1970s with a gondola system.
100%. And there's been fatality on buses as well. I'm not trying to fearmonger at all.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I get
No,
like,
I'm
you know,
just
as
giving you
with any,
the
there's risk with
background.
anything.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's absolutely good to know. So, yeah, I think it's a very ambitious thing. We've often tasked our staff to think outside the box, and this ticks a lot of the boxes in terms of what we're looking for transportation and climate. So, just overall, I think I'm pretty supportive of this. So, those are all my questions. Unless there's more comments.
Thank you, Councilor Mayor Pietri.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think the opportunity to be able to speak to this, we've had a few times presentations here as well as at the city's department that I chair. And I think that there's been other conversations outside of the scope of council. Staff have been involved, and I know that you've conducted picks, and the public have, you know, they've been skeptical because they've been offered, through you, Mr. Chair, a range of subway to gondola and anything in between. But I think what, you know, and I don't want to speak to it so much as ask questions, but to raise some of the skepticism, I think we need to, you know, scope down the timeline of when such a project, if approved, would actually be tangible and who's paying for it. For 2 reasons. The first is obvious. You know, the local municipalities that aren't benefiting from this particular system are asking themselves, because it will be their taxpayers paying into the system if it becomes a regional one. And at that point, the local taxpayers would be asking, how come the province and the federal government don't pony up the same way that they do in other municipalities or regions across, you know, the GTA. And the second reason would be because of presentations like the one we had before with Metrolinx. And I know that colleagues have been critical, through you, Mr. Chair, of timelines that Metrolinx have proposed because they change a lot. And so the general public, when they come forward at PICs with skepticism, they do so in good faith because they've experienced a lot of rhetoric, a lot of plans, a lot of proposals, but they haven't been able to ride anything. And if you consider a BRT moving all the way from the Toronto area to the border and nothing happening, this becomes a better proposition because something is likely going to happen. We don't know in what format. But I just ask, through you, Mr. Chair, whether, and this is not to be critical, but just to bring forward a reality that when the region of Durham proposed a particular means to deal with its waste, there were a number of opportunities for regional councillors who are leaned on to be the shield or the front line in dealing with this stuff, to visit, to physically see this technology. And the reason why, through you, Mr. Chair, I brought up numerous opportunities for us to discuss, either me as chair at the city or here at the region as a counselor and staff there in between and the PICs, is that at no point have we been invited to see this technology. And I think that the conversations I've had with the public is that they've advised that that's not just arrogant, that's rather disrespectful. And it's almost unfathomable that you ask, you know, an in-kind or an endorsement of $1 billion technology, which is 800 million now, was 500 million a few months ago. It would likely be over $1 billion by the time it gets built. But the point is that, you know, I find that, and it's not a criticism to you. Generally, it's distasteful to ask the general public and those who represent them to approve something in principle that they haven't seen. It's also irresponsible for us. And to say that you can go on the internet is something that doesn't fly. So that is a big question. How do we spend $1 billion without even seeing what we're paying for? Through you, Mr. Chair.
So this is not about spending the money, it's about continuing to investigate it, but I understand what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. And I think that we need to understand the timelines. Hypothetically, this gets endorsed today. There is a lot of skepticism and there's a lot of concern with respect to the impacts on properties in that corridor. There are concerns of neighboring municipalities who I suspect are wondering who's paying for this in Oshawa. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I want to thank the neighboring municipalities for paying for this. But I suspect that someone's going to, at the end, want to know, through you, Mr. Chair, who's covering the bill. And so on that, the main question is, in the interim, we have this congestion and we have a need for public transit. And it's not just growing, it's intense. Anybody that's been in Oshawa, it's the student capital of Durham region, and in that particular area, when you look at the region and the reason why the city's corridor has been offered up, it's because you've got students waiting for buses on a daily basis. It's like ants right now. It's not acceptable, through you, Mr. Chair, to have them waiting for this service. In the interim, what are we doing while this is being studied?
Mr. Holmes? And Councillor, that was your time.
Thank you.
So through the chair, to start with your first question about timelines, what we're asking for today is we're not asking for council to endorse the implementation. We're just asking to study further. There's still approximately another 2 years worth of studies to do on this project just to get to a point where we would decide if this is something that we would want to implement. So then beyond that is when we'd be looking for external funding or private partnerships to be able to fund this project. And there would be no expectations that this project would proceed without external senior government funding. And as part of the next phase, we will be looking at private partnerships to also share in those costs. So those are things that we'd be looking at kind of in the next phase, and we'd be able to report back to council at the conclusion of the next phase. I'll turn it over to General Manager Holmes to answer the service question.
Thank you. And through the chair, we have to address the question of what are we doing now? We have a number of activities that are ongoing to best utilize the resources we have for that ridership demand on that corridor and across the region. And that includes adding the articulated buses to the 900 or the 901 and that Simcoe corridor. So it's more capacity that's operating. That's been a big help for us. It's also reducing headways as much as possible. As my colleagues here have said, reliability is key to getting people to use public transit. It's challenging in mixed traffic. And we have frequency now at up to 7 minutes. Every 7 minutes, there's a bus coming along that corridor. We'll push to 5 minutes, but again, reliability is challenging when we're in mixed traffic, but we will continue to add that capacity. We're also looking at other route options, and Councillor had identified one today about things to study. We do know that the Route 920 has taken some pressure off both the Pulse and the 901 by its routing in terms of supporting people moving from the western municipalities who are attending school. So we will continue to look at those options as those new resources come online over the next few years.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson? Councillor Nicholson, your microphone.
Sorry about that. My apologies. My question is in two parts. One is, I find it interesting we're dealing with this at Durham Region when 7 out of the 8 municipalities are not going to be impacted by this plan. Is this project going to be contingent upon having a willing host community who wants to accept the final decision?
Sorry.
Sorry. So through the chair, we would want to have Oshawa's council buy-in on this project. If Oshawa, all of Oshawa Council does not want this project, we would definitely take that into consideration as to how we move forward.
All right, let me be more blunt in my question then.
Sorry.
If the city of Oshawa says it doesn't want this project, will you terminate this project?
Sorry, Councillor, I just wanted to respond as well to that first part of that question. And I think it's really important for us to understand that the users of public transit in the region of Durham today don't just travel within their local municipality. We have residents across the region traveling across local municipal boundaries, again, whether to go to work, to school, cultural events, other activities. So I just want to make it clear that ridership is not just limited, and this corridor benefits residents across the region, not just Oshawa. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that answer, but you didn't answer my question. If the city of Oshawa indicates to Durham Region and to the study that it is not interested in one of these options, will that eliminate that option?
Councillor Nicholson, it would be a regional council decision.
So you're going to impose, Mr. Chair, you're going to impose an option
Nicholson, no,
over
I'm
the
not.
objections of the state of Oshawa?
No, I'm not imposing anything. As a member of council, you would be able to present your case as always, but council makes the decision on transit, not me. It is a collective of all members of council.
Okay, I'll be clarifying my question again, which is if the city, the council of the city of Oshawa, after due deliberation, decides it does not want to proceed with one of these options because of its impact on the people of Oshawa and our infrastructure, will it eliminate that option from consideration? Or could we be overridden? Literally, a unanimous decision of Oshawa Council against an option could be overridden by a regional council. Is that how this would work out? I mean, this is the elephant in the room. Someone has to answer it.
I'll have our CEO try to respond.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Staff would not have the authority to cease the project without having to come to regional council. And the reason that staff would come to regional council is because DRT is a regional service. Certainly, I would anticipate that council would take into consideration the position of the city of Oshawa in this case. But as the general manager pointed out, this would serve cross-local boundaries. Nevertheless, it's not a decision, again, that staff can make. They would have to come back to council with a recommendation that council would either approve or not approve. We're nowhere near that with what is before us today. As the staff have mentioned, there's 2 years of study at least ahead, and many opportunities during that 2 years for Oshawa and other members of council and the public to feed into the process.
All right. Second question is the recommendation today. You're asking us to endorse further study of the ACCT. I can tell you the overall reaction from my constituents is laughter about the idea of having gondolas running up Simcoe Street. So my question comes down to it is, why was this option not presented to the host municipality, at least for its consideration, to see whether it wished to have a position on extending this study or not?
Go ahead, please.
So through the chair, the options were presented at public information sessions. We did have other information sessions where councillors were invited to it. So we have had input from the Oshawa residents. There was opportunities along that process for Oshawa councillors to provide input into the study, and that is how we reached our conclusion as to the recommendation for the ACCT technology.
All right, and my last question is, and make sure I understand correctly, this proposal. This, in the ACT especially, or the BRT, are basically contingent upon some other level of government or private sector investor donating $800 million to $1.1 billion of money for the construction of this project. Is that the essence of what we're doing here?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
When did we make the decision that if the, hypothetically, if the federal government wanted to put $1 billion into Durham Region, that this was the priority we should be spending it on? I can think of a lot of things in Durham Region, in all our municipalities in Durham, to spend $100 billion, or excuse me, $1 billion of investment in, well beyond this one.
Our CAO respond.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. That decision has not been made. We're nowhere near the point where we request investment from other orders of government or commit $1 billion. Anything that the region would invest in this would be through our annual business planning and budget process, and would reflect consideration of all of the other priorities on our table. But just to remind everybody, it is not unusual for major transit expansion to be the subject of intergovernmental partnership, and we would certainly expect the same on this situation. Thank you.
Well, I do thank you for that answer. And the only comment I want to make is I don't want to stop investigation, but I also want to make sure that our dollars that are spent on investigation are spent on appropriate and feasible projects. You're asking the council here in 2025, in fact, 2 weeks into 2025, to endorse an investigation into a project that, by your own estimates, might be at best 2032 or beyond, subject to someone giving us $1 billion. We have a lot of projects that need work in this region. And my concern is, I'd much rather see our transit staff working on providing service to our communities, because with the due amount of respect to the hardworking staff we have in transit, if the bus system in my ward stopped functioning, no one would notice, because we don't have any bus service in Ward 5 in Oshawa. We have one route that goes up down to Spine to Simcoe Street, and all the rest of our communities, which hold 80% of the population, they have nothing. So my question is, why don't we put our energy into actually providing a better bus service to all of Durham Region than chasing these fairy tale projects for something 10 to 15 years from now? Thank you.
No, I do. Councillor Nicholson, was that a statement or a question?
That was a question. Why aren't we putting our energies into improving our current service and spending services to all of Durham Region than spending all this staff time, energy, and intellectual energy on something that literally.
Okay, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, as Council's aware, we do have a 10-year transit strategy that takes us out to 2032 with record levels of investment each and every year. And that really started in earnest last year when we saw the implementation of 60,000 revenue hours service, and we'll see 70,000 hours of revenue service in 2025. We're also seeing that record level of ridership. As I indicated, ridership is up 20% over previous record levels, and staff continue to allocate service to the areas of greatest demand based on the resources we have. And as we are adding more buses, more resources, and more demand comes along, we will be expanding the network along with service frequency and reliability. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson, you're out of time, so if you wish to continue, you'll have to request again.
I've asked my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a few questions. I just want to start with a quick reflection. My father grew up in Windsor and frequented Detroit often. He told me growing up at some point in time, I think in around 1950, Council of the Day or whoever it was at the City of Detroit accepted a generous offer from the motoring company that existed in Detroit. And they gave him a complete fleet of buses with one condition. And the condition was they ripped the streetcar tracks out of the road. That removed efficient transportation from the city of Detroit for, well, till now, till today. I understand they've implemented a streetcar again. From my understanding of the history of this, it's been determined that the busiest corridor for transportation in Durham is Simcoe Street, and it needs a more efficient transportation network. I have to be honest, at the beginning of this, I was skeptical in terms of, as a skier, snowboarder who spent probably close to 2,000 days a year of my life on the hills, I was skeptical at the beginning of this presentation. But now I'm kind of, thinking about it, and, Disney is an example as that wasn't included in your list of locations where people have used cable cars, but I mean, it's one that many of us have frequented. My question is just in terms of a couple questions. One, you have a northern terminus and it shows as it's south of Winchester. How come that wouldn't go north and tie in further into the growing, area of Columbus and or the BRT on the 407?
So through the chair, the intent of that line is to tie into the future 407 Transitway. So that will have a connection there. It would likely require an addendum or some further work once the 407 Transitway study gets further advanced. For extending it further north of it, it is a possibility. However, we just don't see the population or the key destinations north of Winchester to be able to support a rapid transit system. It would be more of a high frequency bus service that would be required north of there.
Thank you. To follow up on what Councillor Kerr had indicated, actually, funny tongue-in-cheek, I was mentioning to some people perhaps we could extend it up to Raglan and reestablish the Oshawa Ski Club that was there at the time. No, but to pick up on what Councillor Kerr had indicated in terms of, all the northern, there is areas of Durham that transit and as such would not work. But I mean, there's many people, we have issues with the GO train stations right now where everybody's driving in and parking. So they might be coming from Port Hope, from Lindsay, from Coburg, wherever, but they're driving to the GO stations and parking. So, I mean, that is going to be an issue at this northern station. Has that been considered?
So through the chair, at this point, we're still at a very high level.
Okay.
So we haven't got to that point. That would be part of the next stage of the study.
Okay, then similarly, downtown Oshawa, there's going to be hopefully a future GO train station. Will this connect seamlessly with that hopefully 15-minute transportation service along the GO line?
So through the chair, yes, that has definitely been considered, and we've done our best to integrate it into the station itself.
Okay. And then just in terms of station spacing, what will the spacing of the stations be?
Through the chair, it's approximately 850 meters, 900 meters, in that range.
Okay, and then in between the stations for transportation options for transit, or will they be walking?
So through the chair, they would be required to walk.
Okay, and then from a development perspective, would these be considered MTAs for us?
So through the chair, no, we do not consider stations that are outside of a GO train station to be an MTSA.
Okay, thank you. And then just further in terms of an impact on Durham residents as a whole, I know we're in Scugog or Oxbridge or Brock. This might not actually affect us in terms of overall service because it's not going to service us, but would a more efficient transportation system that operates economically more efficient have a net positive effect on all ratepayers?
So through the chair, it most definitely would. If we can turn a profit on this system, it allows some of the additional spending to go to service improvements on other routes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCaughey?
Thank you. This is a fascinating report. Thank you. As a skier, I've been on quite a few gondolas, but I'm largely uninformed when it comes to transit usage on them. So, the skepticism is definitely there. And, it's a little bit fearful because we see a lot of positives in the report, and I'm sure that there are lots of positives, but I feel like we don't know what we don't know. And it's relatively new for us to have done our investigation. And it's a pretty big price tag. So we've been through a challenging budget. It's tough. So let's start with the cost to continue the study. So over 2 years, how much resources going into this? Can we quantify that?
So through the chair, the estimates are the next phase of the study will cost around $3 million.
3 million. Okay. So I guess my other big question, and this is a little bit of a open-ended question, but Oshawa's, last I checked, is not Disneyland or Paris or Mexico City. So do we have the tourism? Do we have the population base? I know it's Disneyland. Do we have the population base to really justify this? Because all the examples given were rather large city centers, Manhattan, and we're not talking about the population of just Durham. We are talking about Oshawa. So, it's a little concerning to me that we're way ahead of ourselves in what our needs are. And so, can that be justified?
So through the chair, I'll turn it over to Stephen to provide an answer to that.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, it's an excellent question. The thing to keep in mind is that in most of these cities, the gondola is being used in the outlying regions. Paris, this isn't going right downtown. This isn't going near the Eiffel Tower or anything. This is an outlying region connecting into the outlying outer reaches of their metro system. Mexico City is the same thing. Roosevelt Island is the same thing. One of the things that's important to understand is that what we're finding is that this technology is right-sized for either smaller communities or outlying communities that need fixed link, reliable transit, but can't afford a subway and can't afford a light rail. It's really right-sized. I know $1 billion sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of transit that can literally provide you a vehicle every 26 seconds, reliably, without fail, and again, you're a skier, you know how this works, that's actually a pretty reasonable price tag compared to what an LRT or a subway would cost. And even an LRT, unless you have transit signal priority, you're going to get caught at that intersection every single time, right? So again, except for a subway that, again, is separated from traffic, but is at best every 2 minutes, you're not going to get this level of service at that price tag. And so I see what you're saying, but I actually think it's right-sized for a community such as Durham Region.
Okay. All right. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to go to the commissioner.
Through the chair, just to add on to the response that David Dunn provided to the question from Councillor Mulcahy, the $3 million figure, I think that includes about 800,000 from the region. The remaining two plus million comes from the $260 million ICIP program. I just wanted to make sure there's an significant external funding component to this. And clearly in about 2 years' time, there's a clear go, no-go milestone before we would really launch any design aspects. So the idea behind this 2-year study is to get answers to all the questions, including the questions we don't know, like the councillor put, the known knowns and unknown unknowns, right? The whole matrix. And that's our hope is, given there's no other alternative on Simcoe, we either leave it as an auto-dependent corridor and that has its own consequences, or rapid transit. And the study to date has clearly said there's no option to take away lanes, which means it's got to be added capacity, whether underground or aerial. And that's what we want to explore in the 2-year study.
Thank you. Councillor Wu.
Yeah, good morning, and through the chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. I just wanted to, and I guess this would be directed to either David or Bill, the 901 corridor, and that's Simcoe Street, correct?
Through the chair, correct.
And right at the moment, that is the busiest corridor that we have in Durham Region?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. And we're looking at how we move people, and I think you mentioned that ridership forecast, and is that ridership forecast for Simcoe by 2051 it'd be 97 million?
So through the chair, it would be 9.7 million is what our initial modeling shows if we were to implement an ACCT option.
9.7, sorry, I forgot to put a dot in.
And that's very conservative numbers. We would expect as we proceed through the study, those numbers are actually going to climb.
Okay, so daily right now, what is the ridership?
Through the chair, I don't have daily, but I know for the period of September through early December, we carried 500,000 people on that corridor.
Okay.
It's about 15% of our overall ridership.
Right. And it is a busy corridor, and I think we've discussed this before. A lot of it is going up to our centers of higher learning, Durham College and Ontario Tech. Now, would most of that be the ridership that you would find would be more situational, Monday to Friday, mornings and maybe evenings, and it would flatline in between?
So through the chair, I'll start off and I'll let Bill conclude on this one. So what our modeling is showing is that it's not just the riderships to the post-secondaries institutions. Once the GO station opens up, we're finding a lot of transit trips that are going from, say, the Winfields neighborhood down to the GO station. So it's not just those students. And then I'll turn it over to Bill to answer the question about weekend trips.
Thank you. And I'll just add on to David. We know there's a lot of commercial development as well north of Taunton. And the way that the network is structured now, it really is a grid network for north, south, east, west. And so that corridor, it will not just be for the educational institutions, as David indicated, but also commercial developments further to the west and to the east of that corridor as well that will be used for people to move across the region and to get there. So it really is that multi-factored. It's not just for the post-secondary institutions. And as well, if we remember, we're looking out to 2051. It's not just about today, and it's about that future, what the region's going to need by 2051.
So obviously, status quo will not do.
Yes.
And if I could, and I heard one of my fellow councillors say that certainly in Ward 5, they don't have it, but by doing this, can I say if you build it, they will come?
Through the chair, most definitely they will.
Okay. Now, my question may be to SCJ Alliance, and maybe Stephen or Mike can speak to this. Right now on your map on slide 24, when you look at Canada, I only see 2 dots out in BC, and I would imagine they may be for ski hills, so you're really not, okay. I see Mike shaking his head.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was shaking my head. They are not both ski hills. Those are both urban situations that are being contemplated. One of them was highlighted up there as Burnaby, the
Yep.
SFU, Simon Fraser University, and the other one has to do with
Okay.
Vancouver.
So they're the only 2 in Canada.
No, that is not true.
You have one in Vaughan, is it?
Yeah, Stephen worked specifically on that, actually.
Yeah, I can speak to the Vaughan project. That was really more, it was a white paper, it was sort of a thought experiment to go, okay, in the overall master planning, let's throw a little something else in there. So we were not the lead on that study. It was kind of, we called it a bolt-on to the study, and that there are actually other projects in Canada that we're working on. Unfortunately, sometimes due to NDA situations, we're not allowed to discuss them and that. But I will say that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was very little interest from North America on this. Right now, North America is one of our busiest markets.
And I'm going to harken back to the previous presentation with Metrolinx, and they're not involved with construction, delivery of service. I don't know why you didn't propose this for the Eglinton Crosstown. But because again, SCJ seems to be much involved with the cable-propelled transit systems. I don't know how much you have of the market in the world, but certainly intriguing. And Dave, if I can, transit in itself is a regional, at the region. It's not at the municipality, correct?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay, so when we put in the pulse lanes in Pickering and Ajax, I guess we had consultation with the municipalities of Pickering and Ajax, but it is a regional project, correct?
Through the chair, that was correct, yes.
So this would be pretty well the same. This is a regional project.
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. The other one, and again, unfortunately, Mayor Foster is not here, but when we start talking about senior governments trying to get funding, and we may have a change of government, and we're probably looking at federal monies, hopefully provincial monies, but the private partners, what do you envision as private partners?
So through the chair, one of the things that we'll be looking at as part of the next phase is incorporating transit-oriented development as part of this project and try to tie housing and developments right into the project. So one of the things that we've included in our cost estimate is the necessary land and construction costs for maintenance facility. So these types of systems require a maintenance facility, which can be located anywhere along the corridor. When we do build that maintenance facility, we only require the second, third story level. And so there will be an opportunity to be able to work with developers to be able to build like ground floor commercial, build residential above that, include affordable housing in that scenario. So we'll be looking for opportunities like that to be able to incorporate these stations into private developments and have private developments work with us in the construction of the maintenance facilities.
Okay. Yeah, when you mentioned about commercial, and again, you know, around these, I guess you want to say transit stops an ideal to have maybe, and I'll mention the names, coffee places, you know, the Tim's, McDonald's. I think the mayor did say if we had a bakery in there, we'd have pie in the sky. I'll leave it at that. My last question, and again, this will be SCJ. How long can one of these cables run before you have to sort of, if I can use the term, chunk it? Because you couldn't run this all the way up to Scugog. What's the maximum? Like, then you'd have to obviously build it all at once. You couldn't chunk it. Like, say, from Lakeview to downtown Oshawa, then from Oshawa up to, would it have to be all one length?
Through the chair, no. What we basically do is that we use a series of loops. So imagine a loop. Now, one loop can service multiple stations, but ultimately what you do is when you want to extend, and this is one of those, you know, you spoke about going up to the 407. I'm afraid I can't remember which councillor asked this. What we would basically do is just add a new loop. And what happens is within the station, what happens is the vehicle detaches from one loop, is passed through the station where people get on and off, and then it grabs onto the next loop and it continues on. That's how we expand a system. So theoretically, it could be as long as you want, but of course there's a max speed of a cable car. So you reach a point where you don't want to be going too long, because when you get to that point, it actually makes more sense to go with a high speed or a higher speed technology like a subway or something like that.
Okay,
Mike,
great.
do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Mayor Carter, you were on my list and then you disappeared. Did you still wish to speak?
First of all, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I find this conversation fascinating. I've been fascinated by the whole thing all the way through. I like that we're forward thinking, and I like that we're trying to look at things a little bit different. My question to David is, David, out of the 2-year studies, what do you hope to learn?
Mayor Carter, your speech or your words were broken up. May I ask that you turn your camera off and ask the same question again?
Okay, I'm going to try that. I presume my camera's off now, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, it is.
And so I look better already. So what I was going to ask David is, David, out of the 2-year study that you're going to undertake, what do you hope to learn?
So through the chair, what I would like to see is to see how it fits within the urban environment in Oshawa, to be able to get a better understanding of the cost estimates that we've done to date. So the estimates we've done are just very high level, and they're based on the preliminary drawings that we've had completed. We'd like to take that design further to be able to have that better understanding of what amenities are going to be required in each of these stations, and to be able to determine how these stations are going to be serviced, what type of costs are going to be, And the two-year studies also include the technical requirements that are required under the TPAT process. So we still have to do an archaeological assessment, all the environmental assessments or environmental studies that are required as part of this.
Are you including the university in this discovery work at all?
So through the chair, yes, we've had a couple conversations now with Ontario Tech, with Durham College, and with Trent University.
That's great. I mean, we are a higher learning community, so to be able to get post-secondary education involved would be important. Mr. Chairman, I'm excited about this project, and I'm excited about continuing on the discovery, and I look forward to the final report.
Thank you. Mayor Roy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So what we know is the expected growth. We know that Simcoe is the busiest for transit, and we've known that for some time. Even within the Simcoe Street Visioning Study, but also from our business plans, we know that this area needed to be looked at and identified for options of looking at transit. The hardship and the criticism, and it's especially at this point in time, the criticism of what we have in front of us. The headline will be about a project of gondolas for $1 billion for 14 kilometers. It won't be about the investigation of looking at access of transit along this corridor to give support for an area that is 14 kilometers, which ultimately, just under the build of it, will cost potentially $750,000 per kilometer. So with it, the criticism, and you've already identified at the beginning of your presentation that this is going to be a hard one to swallow. How are we going to communicate to the community the support that this will bring to not only to Oshawa and also for that corridor, which I fully support that we need to be looking at transit, but how are we going to effectively communicate to the community that this is a good thing? Because I'm going to tell you right now, comparatively, it's like building a tunnel under the 401. That's what's going to be, that's what the messaging is going to be. So how are we, $1 billion to build it, but $3 million to investigate it, and knowing we already identified the $3 million and where that's coming from? It's the communication that is what is key here, to be able to say that this is a way of moving forward. I just came back from Japan. The most efficient, effective mechanism of traveling through a country, and to have that opportunity to have that, but to bring that to North America, and you already identified that North America is not a place that is accepting really to moving forward with transit. We have that, like when you take a look at your visioning and looking at page 32 of the visioning project, the perception is this gondola, which will be like a Jetson perception, is this what we want within our community, and why Simcoe Street?
So through the chair, we understand the challenges that we are going to face, and it will be a marketing educational campaign unlike anything we've ever done in transit before. And so it's just getting that knowledge out to the public and taking it to them to try to explain our situation.
So the next steps then with the investigation, which we already have the money allocated to, we've already approved it through the business plans to move forward for the investigation. Will you solely be investigating this, or will you be doing a comparison of opportunities, what we could do? And I know you've already broken down the costing between BRT and the ACCT, but will we be illustrating just the ACCT, or will we be looking at options where we have the opportunity to look at, efficiently, this is the means of how we can move things forward?
So through the chair, at this point, we would just be looking at the ACCT in comparison to operating a high-frequency bus service. So it would be a business as usual versus the ACCT.
So through you, Mr. Chair, and just one more question, and that is that this 14 kilometers is a very diverse component of the community of Oshawa, from historical, and you've already identified all that in the feedback you've already received from community members. That landscape from the 401 up to the 407, how are you going to bring this into place to make it fit, but also with the $1 billion, does that $1 billion also include the modifications that have to be done on the streetscape as well?
So through the chair, the $1 billion, yes, it does take into the full cost estimate of the road improvements and any other potential community improvements that we would need. However, when we get through this part of the study, we'll further be able to define those types of improvements that we would need to make and further be able to refine our cost estimates.
Because the cost of $1 billion today versus tomorrow, we already know how that's going to work.
Costs never go down.
They never go down. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Leahy?
Thank you, Chair. So through you to staff. So again, very interesting. Unfortunately, as a lot of us here, I've only heard lots of challenges and I don't want to say laughter, but you just that whole concept of just a real challenge around residents from Oshawa, just looking from Whitby, just having a challenge to wrap their heads around this entire concept. But again, reading the report, listening to all of your comments, it does come across as a very efficient way of moving that. So just trying to keep an open mind, which is great, and it looks like we're just going to study. So we're only paying for about a quarter of the costs, as was mentioned earlier, because about 2.2 million of this has already been allocated from another fund?
Through the chair, yes. This was all approved through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. And so there was that pot of $6.4 million to study rapid transit along Simcoe Street.
Okay, so that's perfect. So again, most of the cost is covered by that fund. We're just putting in about a quarter?
Through the chair, correct. Yeah, our share is 27%.
Okay, perfect. No, that's great. So again, so it makes all the sense in the world to find out as much information as possible. And it's always been touched on communication issues. The piece, are we going to compare and contrast to business as usual, as was mentioned earlier? Like if we only add those extra buses and go from 7 to 5 minute service, we're not going to be able to keep up with the capacity of users on the line in the future growth. Isn't that the simplest way to describe it?
So through the chair, we'll be able to meet whatever demand is out there, because when you operate buses in mixed traffic, because the buses are they run at a much slower speed, they're constantly stopping, they're stopped at lights, you only get a demand of approximately 4.4 million passengers per year, where under the ACCT system, because it's running so frequently, more people are willing to leave their cars and take transit, and that's where you get 9.7 million approximately passengers per year. So by providing that faster service, that's where you create the greater demand along the corridor. So it's not simply just meeting the number of people that are currently out there waiting at the stops. If we can improve the service, not only will we be able to service them, we'll be able to bring more people onto transit, which also frees up the roadways for those who choose not to take transit.
No, and I agree. I'm all for freeing up the roadways. That's a big plus. Another piece, from my understanding, when we've looked at different things like bus rapid transit, part of the reason that Metrolinx and other organizations there are doing it is because that leads to eventually, with the dedicated lane, to to light rail transit, because you have all the dedicated lanes. Is that not a benefit to doing BRT over LRT, or just because of the space constrictions that it's still better to look at the gondola approach?
So through the chair, so for this corridor, the BRT and LRT were looked at closely. The issues is a very narrow right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
And when I showed the slide on the property impacts and all the red, we would need approximately 16.4 acres of property to be acquired along this corridor, and which impacts close to 300 properties and displaces a large number of residents. So that is one of the real reasons. Also, with the BRT and LRT, we're taking away an existing lane. So we're not expanding the roadway out. And in doing so, as was noted earlier, Simcoe Street is a busy road. And so once we start adding more traffic to it, take away an existing through lane, well, the congestion, the infiltration problems that exist today are just going to get significantly worse, along with the existing road network all around it.
Yeah, no, and again, just doing that for clarity, because that's part of the business case benefits for it, the BRT on Highway 2 and other different things is eventually the LRT piece, so I appreciate that. And there's also narrow restrictions, but not as severe as what was outlined in the report. So I guess just as been mentioned earlier, just I hope we can do a really good job over the next 2 years of communicating the benefits versus the drawbacks, and maybe we can win the hearts and minds of some of the folks that aren't exactly excited about this idea at the moment, but I'm certainly keeping an open mind and support, looking forward to get the reporting in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Second time around, Councilmember Pietri.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon. I believe in the afternoon. No, not yet. We're in the morning. I think that the excitement that some have for this is understandable, but change is difficult to sort of wrap our heads around. I think Mayor Roy made a very pertinent point, and it's one that I hope to draw from some of the questions that I'm going to ask now. I'm just going to ask through you, because it is going to be $1 billion sort of headline that we're going to be dealing with, regardless of what we're endorsing. When the trans left the station, I think it becomes more difficult to stop it. So just want to ask through you, of the proponents that you work with, Director, how many have visited a station or a service or a technology of this nature since we started the process of asking residents that we look at this technology?
So through the chair, we're really taking an incremental approach to this whole process. So we looked at technology options, and then we got to a point where all of a sudden the ACCT and BRT looked like they were being more favorable, so we moved forward to a feasibility study, initial business case. Got through that, realized the BRT option really doesn't fit within this corridor, which is more how we've arrived at an ACCT option. And we're going to continue to take that incremental approach. If we start moving forward and it looks like a more appropriate, feasible option, then visiting one of these sites is something that could be considered at a later date, but we really want to take that incremental approach before we would even consider that.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director, who on staff has visited one of these sites thus far?
Through the chair, nobody on staff has visited one of these sites. That's why we rely on external consultants.
Okay. In fairness, that means that from the conversations I've had, the Chair of Transit has not visited. The Chair of Works, I don't believe has visited. I have not as Vice Chair or Chair at the city. And no one on staff has visited this technology, yet we're being asked to endorse. What's the dollar amount to move forward with? Is it 3 million more, or is it?
So through the chair, the next phase of the study is expected to cost around $3 million.
What was the last phase of study?
So the last phase of the study was 750,000.
Okay. Okay. So through you, Mr. Chair, in fairness, I think, again, to Mayor Roy's point, and I don't mean to be, critical or blunt, but I don't see too many staff members' names on the ballot in the next couple of years, or at least I haven't surmised that. We're going to be the front line. Mayor Roy, Councillor Mulcahy, myself, other council members in the north, selling this technology. As much as we have external consultants, they're proponents that are positive for this particular technology. The regional staff and transit, that's your job, to bring us options that look at exciting and new ways to get people moving in our community. But leaving the visiting of the technology that we're asking to be endorsed today until a very later date, and essentially, arming us with nothing more than just trust us, we're going to do this right, isn't something that excites me. And I'm a huge proponent of change. I don't think there's too many people that have, been at the forefront of change with the level of excitement that I have, but it's got to be done responsibly. And I don't see us being responsible in asking for an endorsement. So I'm going to ask through you, Mr. Chair, if it would be harmful if we just tabled this until we actually saw the technology and knew a little bit more about it. Because for the most part, you know, we've got internet clips, we've got, you know, I've been on one being, you know, a skier, but that's not exactly the same thing as talking about running it down the corridor of a city. Regardless of how positive it seems on paper, the reality is, as I think many have indicated, the 500 million went to 800, then it'll go to $1 billion, then it'll go more. And I think the competing interest with what the public have, you know, indicated as being a concern is, how much more transit can you buy in the interim with that kind of money to improve this current system? I know council members have made that remark. So I'm just going to ask, would it be appropriate or would it harm your cause if we just tabled this until we saw it and understood what we were dealing with before we endorsed this? Because through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not going to pull any punches, and I think that we're aware of different processes in other communities, that when, you know, we've endorsed something in principle, it's actually done. Like, it's been done. And I think Clarington is one that could attest to that. So, a little different, but this project is one that's significant, and the impacts need to be understood. Not just the negative, the positive. And I think it would be responsible for us to see that, feel that, know that firsthand. At least I know that it would be beneficial for the chair of transit and those involved directly in answering to the public in their communities to be involved in it. So the question is, does it hurt to just table this until we're able to see it? It is a lot of money.
So through the chair, if I could ask Commissioner Jagannathan to provide a response.
Yeah, through the chair, just to comment or answer an earlier part of the question, Councillor, there are two elements that will make part of the study, which I'm hoping would give much more exposure to both the pros and cons of this technology. We have internally talked about hosting like a one-day workshop, for example, at a Durham College or Ontario Tech campus, where some of the operators can come in live and talk about their systems and so on. And all along, like, we are going to evaluate the optimism in this. And if that's a positive, we certainly would recommend for council's consideration for some key members of council to really actually see these systems, hopefully some in winter conditions as well. So there's a lot of no-go milestones along the way, as opposed to, like, having any thinking that this is a done deal. Like, in no one's mind, I think it's a done deal. There is going to be clear information sharing. Like I said, like, those two elements I think would be vital. One, being able to talk to the operators of these agencies, through a one-day workshop, like getting them on Teams or Zoom and so on. And more importantly, actually visiting the systems so that you could see the passengers queuing up. Like, I know we had some good answers from the consultants here, but it's no substitute to actually seeing it in operation. So, and with that said, like, staff recommendation is still to continue. Again, this is investigation. It's a one-time opportunity to study a transformative solution at a 27-cent dollar. So, like, the remaining coming from the province of the feds.
Okay, my time's almost up, and I'm going to put down for some more questions, because clearly asking, if I was a student, and I was not too long ago, 300 years ago, it's kind of like asking someone at a hockey game if they're, a hockey fan. Like, of course they're going to be. But when is council that is being asked to endorse something that is going to be relevant to $1 billion expenditure or more by the time it's built, going to see this?
Your time's up. Members of council, I've been in this chair since 9 o'clock this morning, and I know there's more people with questions, but the chair needs a 10-minute break. So does staff. Moved by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor McDougall on a 10-minute recess. Just let me ask, Mr. Clerk, is lunch in the back? Yes. Okay, Mr. Clerk, do you think 20 minutes would allow people to get their lunch and come back and we'll do a working meeting? Okay, Councillor Kerr, I'm asking for a 20-minute recess.
Yes, and make it a working,
Make it
working
working
lunch.
lunch. Councillor McDougall? Councillor Kerr, put your name back in because you wanted to speak again. On a 20-minute recess, please take advantage, grab your lunch, come back into the room, and we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. I'm 16, so how many do we have online? 2? That's 18? 19? Okay. Call back to order. I'll call this meeting back to order. Mr. Clerk, a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Electronic roll call is starting now.
Still spinning? We have quorum, 19 votes are cast. Okay, members of council, we have quorum, so we'll continue with first-time speakers. Mayor Wadden. Push your button again, please. No, you don't have to push your button. Push it, I would push it for you, but push it now so I can get you on the list. Speak. Yes, please.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll sit on my hands. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I'll qualify my, my comments with, I think it's a fabulous forward-looking project. I have been on quite a few gondolas in my travels, and I do think that it really addresses the congestion and the future challenges of travel down Simcoe Street. I believe that it will be the least invasive for the owners along that route, and it will respect the heritage residents as well as any new. There's some great stops for it. It will create efficiencies. And if I haven't learned anything from this council in my last little while, it is that we have to look ahead and we have to spend some money to do that. So I really don't have a question other than I'm wondering if Councillor Marin Pietri was looking for a trip to Paris, but if he gets it, I'd like to put my hand up too. So that's one of the ones I haven't been on. But Ramesh, if you could just reiterate how much the second phase will actually cost. I know the big number is $3 million, but I know that there's, I forget what you said about how much it will actually cost the region.
Through the chair, the study is expected to cost about $3 million, of which about 27% is external funding. So our portion would be about $800,000.
Thank you. Anyway, that was basically my question, as I couldn't remember that. And I do want to reiterate that I think it's a fabulous forward-looking project, and that's what, to me, this region is all about. So those are my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Still on first-time speakers, Councillor Yamada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, how did you reach your assumptions in regards to the forecast of annual ridership?
So through the chair, I will turn it over to Patrick Miller, who completed the IBC work on this.
Thank you. Through the chair. It's a great question. So the methodology we use for the transportation demand forecast is consistent with other major infrastructure projects in Ontario. We used a model developed both by the academic consulting community that looks at the choices people make today and says, how are people going to make choices in the future based on the options they have available? So kind of take things as they are and you add the gondola and you'd say with its parameters, how fast it travels that our colleagues at SCJ spoke about, who's likely to choose that gondola. It looks at demand today as well as into the future using population forecasts developed by the province.
Okay. In terms of your cost comparisons, when I look at the 1.1 billion compared to the 800 million for the bus rapid transit, I know when you look at projects like bus rapid transit, you build the corridors and hopefully further down the road, those might be able to be converted into light rail transit. What kind of savings would you see if part of the infrastructure is being built built now for the possible conversion to light rail transit?
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for the question. I think there's a lot of discourse in the transportation planning and engineering community about mode progression. So as you pointed out, the ideal will start with a BRT. We'll go back later and we'll add an LRT in place. That isn't as common as some of the discussions might put out there. And sometimes when we've looked at that, we have looked at it in the prairie provinces before. It can be a lot more challenging and carry more costs than you might consider on the onset. I don't have any factors and data in front of me. The work we did was probably about 10 years ago. With inflation, what it is, it would take me some time to update them. But we did see that it's not a trivial exercise to move from BRT to LRT. And so, often requires immense disruption to the travelers, and often requires significant rework of utilities, power systems, and all the different components you have to add in without necessarily giving you a faster, more frequent, or more reliable service. And I think some of the earlier work conducted by the region showed that BRT and LRT roughly in their mature end state would perform equivalently. And I found that in my own work in Vancouver, in Alberta, and other places looking at that idea of BRT and LRT. You can make them perform the same, so you don't necessarily get a dividend for going back and investing later into LRT, but you might get a lot of extra costs and disruption.
Okay. In order, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, through you to, I guess, increase the forecast annual ridership on that corridor to 9.7 million, this is, from what I see right now, this would be our only corridor. If I'm living in Whitby, I'd probably hop on the Taunton Road bus if I'm going to Ontario Tech, or Durham College, and work my way on a bus to this gondola. I'd still need to be riding a bus. So I'm if the bus is still slower as you maintain, then, or it could bunch up, so on and so forth, I still don't see how this 9.7 is still going, that more people are going to be taking transit if I have to transfer onto a bus, or I have to start a bus to transfer onto a gondola.
Through the chair, Councillor, it's another great question. How the models work is they do take into account people's interest in, say, doing multiple transfers, as you pointed out. Is someone less likely to want to take the gondola if they have to take a bus or two to get there? So the model includes what's called a transfer penalty. That basically says we're going to make it feel really challenging to that modeled individual to take all those services, and then tests, is that still an option they would consider when they could maybe drive, take another combination of transit options, maybe use a ride share or a taxi or an active mode of travel. And I think in some ways, our colleagues at the region mentioned these forecasts are conservative, because when we were working with them, we said, you know what, this is a new mode to the region. It's a new type of network that we'd be building, those east-west connecting routes. We don't have the full interfaces worked out. How hard is it to get off the bus and get into the station? So we were actually one of the more conservative elements on the team, and we do stand behind those forecasts. I think they do accurately reflect those transfer penalties. But what I'd invite council to consider when thinking about the next study is, if we were to optimize those east-west routes further and improve the design of the stations, maybe we could get beyond the forecasts that are presented. But I would go back to the point that I think you raised an excellent question. We do include that in our modeling. We don't want to overstate demand, because these do impact very serious public policy decisions. We want to present a conservative estimate that takes into account everything down to, is that person going to want to wait, on a snowy day on the corner for that bus and then get out, walk up some stairs and go to the gondola. The model does try to emulate that behavior when it punches out that figure you quoted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, second time around, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is actually following on what Councillor Yamada is, and I'm trying to get my head around these ridership estimates. The region of Durham is less than 1 million people now, and is projected over the next 20, 30, 40 years, even at the most positive and most optimistic, to be, say, even doubled its population. But you're projecting that a ridership on this route would go from 500,000 thereabouts to 9.7 million over a 20-year cycle. Where are you getting the people from?
So through the chair, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Patrick Miller. The 500,000 number that Bill estimated was just for the fall of last year. It wasn't over the course of an entire year. And that was also
what is the number? before we get into the debate, what is the actual ridership number for the Simcoe Street corridor annual number?
So through the chair, the corridor itself is roughly 2.5 million per year currently.
So you're projecting a threefold, to be generous, a 3 or 4-fold increase in ridership over the next 20 years. Is that?
So through the chair, if the transit service is improved to provide a fast, frequent, reliable service, yes.
All right. Just so I understand that, and as I only can take it from my own personal experience, my own constituency. For me to get to Simcoe Street is more than a kilometer. So I would have to take a bus from my house or drive my vehicle, or if it's a sunny day, I could walk to get to the Simcoe Street corridor in order to take the gondola. If I'm coming from most of Oshawa, that would be a very similar situation. Because contrary to your expectations, most people don't live in the Simcoe Street corridor. They live outside the Simcoe Street corridor.
Question, please.
So the question I would put to you is, would we not then, in order to make this system work, then have to severely upgrade our east-west collector bus routes in order to bring people to the Simcoe spine?
So through the chair, that would be part of the service plan, is to provide those feeder routes to the rapid transit system.
And is that something that has been included in the cost estimate, or is that going to be a Durham region only cost that has to be added to facilitate this project?
So through the chair, that is something that can be considered in the next phase of the study. To date, we've only looked at high-level costs, and that is basically for the rapid transit system itself. Other service improvements within the region have not been the scope of the study.
All right. My last question, again, just to seek clarification, because the councilors are asking good questions. The one I'm trying to get my head around, and in a perfect world, gondolas would work. I'm looking at it, an elderly woman in the middle of December or January, February, while the wind is blowing and there's a blizzard. Are they going to walk up 3 flights of stairs in order to get to a gondola and then down in the middle of a snowstorm?
So through the chair, there are going to be elevators at each one of these stations that they could access.
Okay, but the design you showed me showed elevators for accessibility issues, not for the general public. Is there going to be sufficient elevator space to handle the general public going up 3 stories to a gondola?
So through the chair, the expectation is that we would have sufficient elevator space. However, that is also something that we would look at in the next phase of the study as to the operations of these stations themselves.
Okay, and the last question I would hope you, if this goes ahead, and I don't know if council will approve it or not, but if it does go ahead, are you going to be looking at where the connection hubs are with people, say, driving to the gondolas? Where are they going to park? Where are they going to do? How are they going to get there, and how are they going to get to their homes from the gondolas? So my biggest fear is that you're going to turn Simcoe Street into a parking lot where people are going to be parking their cars, using it to go north from my area or south, and then returning, expect to find a car there. So I guess my question is, will that be part of the study?
So through the chair, yes, that is something that we would be looking at in the next phase of the study, whether we need some kind of park and ride lots along the corridor.
All right, thank you. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Second time, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to scope my question or questions to the actual report. Excuse me. First of all, the first phase of this report, I believe you said cost $750,000.
Our last phase that we did, yes, about 750,000.
Thank you. And over what period of time was that money spent?
That was over the last year and a half.
Okay. So what we're seeing now is this is going to be $3 million over 2 years. And then 800,000 of it is going to be from the region. Is that correct?
Approximately, Correct.
So why the big increase in the cost of the report? I'm just trying to get some clarity on what the increased money will be spent on as opposed to what we'd spent for the first part.
So through the chair, the level of work that is anticipated to be done is in far more detail, so it's far more time consuming. So the things that we're going to be looking at as part of the next phase is, in addition to all the environmental studies and the archaeological, our consultation requirements, is creating like 3D modeling along the corridor so that people can actually get a feel as to what it's going to look at. So those types of exercises are more expensive to complete, and that is why there's an increase in costs.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Marion Pietri.
Mr. Chair, I had the opportunity over the break to work with and discuss some matters with staff, including our CAO and external, as well as fellow colleagues. So I just wanted to ask a question that could inform the process moving forward as we deal with the report later. So through you, Chair, just wondering if staff could advise as to whether or not next steps and a communication strategy would come forward in Q1 so that a potential of a referral back is not required. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, I'd be prepared to move a referral of the report back to staff for those items to be brought back to council for consideration. So through you, just wondering through staff.
So through the chair, yes, that's definitely possible to have completed within Q1.
Okay. As part of that process, through you, Mr. Chair, the considerations that have been made here today by council members will be included in that report back to council in Q1?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. And I guess I heard my good friend Mayor Watton she's talking about me. Been there, done that. And no, it's not for that reason. It's for the simple reason through you, and I'm going to impress this upon our council. I know that this is a $3 million ask today, but it leads to billions of dollars of investment. And the general public needs to understand both the positive and the negative impacts in a transparent way that's communicated to them, inclusive of who's paying for it. And I think part of that, big part of that, is understanding this technology firsthand. And so whomever it is that is able to engage in that process, external, staff, council, whatever the case is, it needs to be credibly advanced. And I think at this point, we're premature in endorsing, and that's where I stand as a result of that. But if through you, Mr. Chair, you're saying that in Q1 you'll be putting together that the communication strategy and the next steps offered to council, then I appreciate that, and a referral won't be needed at this point. So thank you.
Okay, members of council, that exhausts the speakers list. So thank you very much, and we'll move on.
Bring the report forward now.
Councillor Marion Pietri, could you give me, the report number is 7.3. Want to give me a motion to alter the agenda to bring 7.3 forward? Okay, moved by Councillor Marion Pietri, seconded by Mayor Watton. On bringing that report forward, I'll call the vote now. Mr. Clerk, oh, sorry. You're back up again. Is that to speak to what's going to happen next? Okay, it's to move the motion, okay. Yeah, okay. So to alter the agenda and bring the item forward, and that is item 7.3. All those in favor? In opposition? Oh, was that in opposition? No? Okay. That carries. So members of council, we're dealing with report 7.3, cow 3. Okay. All right. First of all, we need a motion to get it on the floor. So I'm looking for Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Leahy. So the motion is on the floor. All right. So I'm going to go to our first speaker, Mayor Roy.
I want to look for clarity on just what the answer was about the referral. So the comment is that in Q1, we'll have the information on a communication plan and the steps moving forward. But within the report, if we approve the report, is this automatic that in Q1 that this will be a part of the steps forward? Because it's not outlined. Do you need that direction, or is staff taking that direction?
Staff will take it as direction.
But in the end, the moving forward is we're moving forward with the report.
Approving the report, yes.
Because ultimately, I believe that I think just in helping a lot of us around the table, even with the communication piece as of today out to the community, I think a referral is best
Referral is always in order.
in the context of that direction in Q1. So we give the direction of in Q1 that we have this information brought forward back to council, because ultimately the communication to the community is council approved a $1 billion project today.
Mr. Clerk.
A referral with those instructions would be in order, so we wouldn't be making a decision today on proceeding with the project.
So a referral with those directions would be in order, but that we wouldn't be proceeding with the project today.
But no, we wouldn't be proceeding with the project today, but we would be getting more information, which would be tied in essentially to the review of the project, which would still be moving forward with this project in the context of not having that full commitment as yet. Because I think that's going to be what needs.
Well, if you're thinking
Can I
of
have the referral first? I'll move for a referral
first, please.
with the intent of having communication plan, scope of work, to be brought forward to council for consideration and potentially further consultation with Oshawa Council.
Okay, as always, I'm going to ask you to put it in writing so the clerk gets it. But Mr. Clerk, were you able to capture that? Yeah, just give us a second and we'll pull it together, and then I'm going to ask if it can be popped up on the screen. Okay, I'll come back to you in a second. Okay. Okay, thank you. Be referred back to staff with the instructions to prepare communication plan, scope of work, and consultation with Oshawa Council. Does that cover?
That covers it.
All right, then, Councillor. Sorry. Okay, can I get a second and get it on the floor first? Okay, so seconded by Councillor Kerr. So the item's now on the floor. Commissioner.
Through the chair, I just wanted to clarify one thing. It's been raised a couple of times. The same presentation, if not similar, was made to the Oshawa Economic Development and I think and Community Services Committee on December 2nd. I just wanted to make sure we didn't go to their council, but we did go through the committee, and we had some similar, good questions and answers, and some of those questions will be answered as part of the study.
As the mover, we can speak to referrals. So as the mover, Mayor Roy?
So well, I can, and I'm going to concur with Mayor Watton on this as well too. And it's about being brave to make bold steps. But when you make those bold steps, you have to ensure that within those bold steps, the recognition of our current environment around us with our community is to be able to have a very transparent understanding of what we are approving today. And I don't want the media to take away a $1 billion project as moving forward when it's creating such a negativity on something that could be so positive. And I do believe that while the answer was within for Oshawa Council, I think that the understanding of the benefits, the pros and the cons, like really need to be looked at within this project. I also believe that our post-secondary institutions, which we see them every single time we have a transit meeting for a budget, they're always here. The Student Association is here speaking to their needs. And while we're talking about 14 kilometers and the impact of 14 kilometers, there could be substantial gain versus the cost. And I think that's what needs to be helped. And it's that most important part of it is the communication component of it, because I don't believe this is the only area that we're going to be seeing changes for transit and transportation across our community as we build out our community and look at what 2031 and 2051 looks like for us. So it is that foresight versus the today, but also recognizing our past to our future. And I think that's a key component that we need to be recognizing here when we move this forward. The short time frame of having answers, I don't think it's going to put off anything. I think it's going to help us than hinder us.
Councillor Kerr is the seconder. Did you wish to speak to it, the referral? Can you turn them off, please?
Very briefly, Mr. Chair. Whilst this presentation was given to the Economic and Development Services Committee, it should be given to Oshawa Council as a whole so that all the councillors agree. My ward colleague is a city councillor. He was also on that committee, but there are parts of the city that will be affected by this, and so all city council needs to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Nicholson on the referral.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to make an amendment to the referral, but just because I think it does cover most of the items. But I think it's also important for the staff to give us information as part of the community story about the impact this potential project could have on the current transit system and what changes would have to be made to feed into this. For example, just very briefly, we've designated Bloor Street in the city of Oshawa, all the way from the Whitby boundary to Clarington, as a major urban transit corridor, but it doesn't have a bus on it right now. If we're going to feed into the Simcoe Street spine, we're going to have to see major changes along that corridor and along similar corridors on the east-west. So I'm just saying I think we need to know what those changes are going to be needed to be done and what the cost is going to be. It's not just $1 billion to the feds. There could be considerable costs to the taxpayers of Durham Region. And I think if we're going to be transparent, we need that information as well when we come back with a communication plan. There is a lot of skepticism. That's not surprising. But it's also a matter of prioritization. And just to respond to the one comment about being brave, let me put the analogy I've heard before. Jumping out of the airplane with a parachute is brave. Jumping out of the plane without a parachute is foolhardy. And the line between the two is a couple of straps on the parachute. So I think we need to make sure we have the information. Thank you.
Thank you. On the referral, Mayor Carter.
I'm going to turn my camera off just because it seems to help. Is that advisable, Mr. Chair?
Yes, and it does help. Thank you.
So what is the expectation of the referral? What's the timing? Because I want to manage expectations. I know that our agenda in Oshawa is very heavy in the first 6 months. So I would probably say that the opportunity to be able to get in front of council plus feedback to regional council would be Q3.
I'll go to our CAO.
I believe discussion to this point has been that the staff would report back in the first quarter. Perhaps if there's agreement, we could extend that to the end of the second quarter.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I know what our workload is right now, and I don't see it coming to council until Q3. And I don't want people to be under the misconception. If it comes earlier, it comes earlier, but I know it's coming, and I know that we have a lot of big decisions that have to be made and complicated files. I'm just saying that I don't see it coming in front of our council until probably Q3.
To the mover of the motion, the referral, would you be acceptable to Q3? Sorry.
So there's no timeline in there.
So
The-
there's no timeline in the motion, so.
But the commentary did allude to the Q1.
Yes.
If the mayor of Oshawa is not able to accommodate, I would hope that there would be an opportunity for accommodation and review, but if it's Q3, it's Q3.
Okay, so members of council, just be aware that there is no time state in the motion. As a friendly?
I think there has to be a specific that the timeline may be accommodated by Q3, but I want it as may be accomplished by Q3. I just know that I don't want to promise something we can't deliver.
Okay, Mayor Carter, Mayor Roy, would you be in agreement Q3 or earlier? Okay, and seconder, Q3 or earlier. Can you amend the motion, please?
May.
Okay, it's before you. That's yeah, Mike. Your microphone's on, Mayor Carter. But does that meet your needs?
Well, I think I suggested again, may be by Q3.
Okay, just introduce Oshawa Council. May by Q3. Does that work? Just a nod, Mayor Roy. Councillor Kerr. Councillor Kerr, I need a nod. Okay.
With apologies to members, we're having a discussion of grammar. Potentially by Q3 may be the preferred wording.
Okay, that works. Okay, Mayor Carter, you're good with that? I'm going to make the assumption that he is. Mayor Carter, you're good with that?
The wording, I'm fine. I don't know why. I'd like to hear more in regards to others where they stand on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Watton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the this resolution, I am just wondering, with the scope of work that is mentioned, given what is outlined within the report, is this a different scope of work that you're referring to for this referral, or is it what's encompassed in page 2 and 3 of the report? I just asked that because it does outline process and timing there. It does speak to going to Oshawa City Council, so on and so forth. So I'm just really curious, is it all tied to the communication plan, or is the scope of work and consultation also part of that communication plan? I'm just not clear on what I would be voting on.
Go ahead.
I believe what is before you is asking for a more detailed work plan or implementation plan for phase 2 of the study, as well as the communication plan. So it would be more detailed than you're finding in section 2 of the report.
So then, if I may, to the consultants, what what would that look like in trying to bring something forward by Q3?
So through the chair, it's definitely doable by Q3. It would take a scope change with our consultants, so there is additional work that would be required, but by Q3, it's definitely doable.
And will that increase the price?
Yes, most definitely.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Wu.
Yeah, and again, through the chair, and I think part of the presentation that we did receive and hear, I think you're already prepared for this. I'm only guessing when I look at the way your timelines are and that you did have already for this particular meeting in this slide deck. Now I've lost my page. You said education session for public and stakeholders. Is Oshawa one of the stakeholders?
They are. Sorry, yes, they are.
So can I ask, what we're asking here, and I support this, the referral, are you already prepared to come forward to address the city of Oshawa?
We are definitely prepared to.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McCaughey.
Thank you. So as far as a communication plan goes, would we be seeing, with reference to, my questions earlier about a comparator to a community that's similar to Oshawa? Could that be part of the communication on this? It would really help me in making that decision moving forward.
Through you, Mr. Chair, by no means the expert on this, but I would think the comparators would be part of the more detailed analysis that will be done as part of phase 2, as opposed to the communication plan.
Okay. All right, well, it helps to defer it and hopefully have more information, so thank you.
Councillor Marion Pietri.
Chair, I appreciate the opportunity to have asked questions extensively earlier and now deal with this in public session as we should, very transparently. And I can tell you, I appreciate the referral sort of suggestion provided by Mayor Roy and supported by my colleague Councillor Kerr. But I don't agree with deferring or referring something back into a stage of Q3, because if we are being honest and transparent, I'll just speak for myself. I was seeking assurances as staff without a referral required, and it was provided that we would have a communication strategy, we would have an engagement strategy, and we would have the questions that councillors asked dealt with in Q1. And just as maybe those who are apprehensive about moving forward with an endorsement in principle, I'd be just as apprehensive in saying that we're going to do it in Q3, because if we're being honest, we're basically signaling that we're killing the project. And if that's the intent, because Q3 is rather late, and then, let's be honest with ourselves, it becomes an election issue. And if we want a headline that gets miscommunicated, it will definitely be in Q4 or Q1 of 26. And that's unfortunate, because I don't think that the questions that were asked, unless they were misunderstood, were intended to lead to that. If the process that we're engaging is one that I know that post-secondary institutions want us to be involved in, that the local unions and service providers want us to be involved in, and that residents as a whole expect us to see through, then, we're elected to consult with them on a daily basis. The consultation, respectfully, has happened in Oshawa in a number of different ways. I chaired the meeting, and I know that you can have meetings on end if you wish, but if there's an intention to kill it, do it today. If you would like to move forward, maybe we should just have staff report back in Q1 as opposed to referring back waiting for a Q3 and a consultation process, which as Mayor Carter indicated, may not even happen because we are so jammed up with stuff. And it's also to suggest that maybe we haven't had a consultation before, which is not true. And I think that it begs the question of maybe how intense or how detailed the consultation needs to be or had to be or should be. We're never, ever going to have a perfect consultation. In this case, I will not be supporting the referral because I do believe that the later that this decision is made, the more political it gets. If we want an appropriate decision, it's unfortunate, and I'll say this openly, that there was a level of, I guess, I would say I'm disappointed. I'm not going to say there was a level of arrogance or disrespect towards us. I don't think that was, intended. But I think it was inappropriate for, a council or a body at staff level to suggest or think that a council body, inclusive of those who are going to be affected and stakeholders, vote on something in principle without having, some of these things ironed out in advance. And it's not like we had a couple months. We didn't have we had a couple years to iron this out. A visit could have been paid to this stuff, and it could have been done on your own time too. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter of being able to deal with this, including, and especially as Mayor Roy has indicated, a communication strategy. Because you can't just stack the deck on the positives. You also have to have the impacts and then weigh them and say, and be honest with people. This is exactly what you can expect. And for anyone to think, you know what, it's uncomfortable, doing that kind of stuff and spending that kind of money because, the taxpayer is going to ask you, like, we're investing $1 billion potentially. I'm sure that the taxpayers would understand that the due diligence that was required, which is a drop in the bucket, was performed in due process. So we can't go back to where we were. We can only move forward. And so I'll just be open and honest with everyone here and just transparent, maybe even blunt, that if we're going to move forward, let's just, be honest with people today. If not, put your votes towards killing the project. But please, like after the staff assurance that we, were afforded, let's not seek a Q3 or a Q2 or a Q4, or whatever time limit that we want for further consultation, because I've been around for a while and I know how that's going to end.
Councillor Nicholson? Councillor Nicholson?
Yeah, I'm here. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like at this point to request a recorded vote when this comes to decision. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, that exhausts the list. A recorded vote has been called. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recorded vote on the referral is starting now.
Okay, the referral carries. Members of council, thank you very much for all the work that you've done today. We're finished with so you're welcome to stay for the rest of the afternoon, or if you would like to take leave now, please take your leave. We'll give you a minute to get organized. Members of council, we're back onto our agenda. The next item is Allison Burgess, Director of Communications Engagement, on our Durham Region's 50th anniversary.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, Chair Henry, members of council and staff here. I have the pleasure to be here today on behalf of many staff across departments and across the organization to share some of the success, some of the fun, some of the work we did celebrating Durham Region's 50th anniversary last year. So it was almost 1 year ago today, actually, where we launched the 50th celebrations. We had our flag raising at January Council in 2024. Our 50th logo was designed by a graphic designer here in-house at the region and incorporated the Durham D with what we call a retro vibe. I will note that Tim Hortons came out with a logo using a similar design later in the year, so we have been saying all year that we are absolutely trend-setting. For the year, we flew Durham Region's 50th flag, as well as the Durham Region Police Service's 50th flag at our site here at headquarters, as well as all of our other locations. But it wasn't just about the flags. We also printed tablecloths, we printed banners, and we shared them across departments. So anytime that there was someone out in the community, meeting with community members, we were showcasing and celebrating our 50th year. We also created digital banners and a social campaign. And for each week, for 52 weeks, we shared a fact about Durham Region. Some of them are located here, some of them are about Hear the Chair. They were educational. Regional Chair John Henry was first elected in 2018. Some of them were a bit more fun. Do you recognize this location across Durham Region? Please take your guess. So we had lots of great engagement through that process. We also created a community engagement site, so durham.ca/50 years, and we asked the community to share with us some stories or some photos from their time living in Durham Region. We heard from Sheila that she's lived in different cities and towns, but there was always something special in Durham and about the people here. She loved having a picnic and being at the lakefront, and now as a resident of Fairview Lodge, she continues to have many friends in Durham Region. Bob told us that he's lived in Durham Region for almost 80 years, and he's grateful for living in a community that has given him so much. It was great to hear these stories, and it was also great to see the photos of the region from years past. Some of these photos were here from more than 50 years ago, but they really visually demonstrate for us Durham's journey of growth and prosperity. In the spring, we launched the Chair for a Day contest. Students taking civics and careers as part of the grade 5 or the grade 10 curriculum were asked, what would you do if you were the regional chair? Students submitted their vision for the region through a written, an audio, or a video response, and I think the chair would agree with me by saying it wasn't easy for the team to choose just 2 winners. Pictured here is Tiana, the winner from grade 10, who spent the day with the regional chair. Oops.
Hi, my name is Faith and I live in the beautiful town of Bowmanville. I'm here to share my vision for the future of Durham Region, a place where every kid can feel safe, supported, and free to be their own unique selves without fear of judgment. This is the region where kids roam freely, expressing themselves without worrying about being bullied. A place where kindness and support are the norm, where every child understands the importance of treating others with respect and empathy. In my vision for Durham Region, all kids have gone through and have full access to programs and resources provided by the regional government through our amazing social services department. These programs are designed to proactively build emotionally resilient kids and prevent very common challenges like anxiety, depression, and bullying. You see, bullying doesn't just hurt in the moment. It can lead to long-term mental health issues and affect a child's confidence and well-being. That's why it's essential for Durham Region to have proactive programs in place to address these issues before they even start. But it's not just about preventing problems. It's also about having fun and enjoying life to the fullest. That's why I believe in supporting programs that promote collaboration, positivity, and inclusion, where kids can come together to learn, play, and grow.
And so that was Faith, a grade 5 student from Bowmanville, who I think we can all agree has a really great vision for the future of Durham Region. And she also went around for a day with the regional chair. Then we moved into June, and in June we hosted Doors Open Durham across 4 different Durham locations. We opened up headquarters, we had the Durham York Energy Center, the Duffin Creek Water Pollution Control Plant, and the Scugog Depot opened its doors for the public. We also joined DRPS at Iroquois Park for their 50th celebration held on the same day. We saw more than 800 people attend our 4 sites, and truly it was really exciting and inspiring. Staff from departments got to share some of the work that they do with members of the public. Lots of great questions. One of the prizes that we did as a giveaway was we auctioned, or we had a ballot, I guess, if you attended for the Oshawa General Suite draw. And we've heard back from people who won that. We announced the winners chosen at random in July. They've now attended their game. We've heard back about what a great experience it was. Durham Region Transit also got on board with the celebrations. There was some celebratory bus wraps and Presto card giveaways. And so in August, Durham Region Transit Community Engagement Team, as well as our communications and engagement team, went out together with a Presto Pass giveaway. It was an opportunity to engage with transit users and encourage ridership and people who weren't yet transit users. So thank you very much to the DRT ambassadors for bringing their great energy and excitement along with their expertise about DRT. Then in September, we opened up the 50 trees that were planted here at regional headquarters sites, and we unveiled the plaques. 9 trees were planted along the east side of headquarters, along Garden Street, recognizing Durham Region and each of the 8 local area municipalities. A big thank you for Facilities for making this possible, and we look forward to what these trees are going to grow into and represent as over the next 50 years. Strategic Initiatives was busy helping keep Durham Region look its best through various different public art installations. So at regional headquarters, staff can enjoy new vibrant picnic tables. This was actually really interesting. During the Doors Open event, local artists came and started to paint the picnic tables live while people were there to interact with them, ask about their art, ask about their process. And now these picnic tables remain as a great place to enjoy the outdoors. Or perhaps out in the community, you've come across some of our Muskoka chairs on your travels. 8 Muskoka chairs were installed in each municipality as part of a creative placemaking initiative. You can find them at Beaverton Harbor Park, Cartwright Peace Park, Uxbridge Historical Center, Beachfront Park in Pickering, the Ajax Water Supply Plant, Linda Creek Conservation Area, Purple Woods Conservation Area, Long Sault Conservation Area. And because of the popularity of these chairs, there'll actually be more that'll be installed later on this year. And then the next one is our legacy webpage. So as a tribute to and a nod to the 50th anniversary, this webpage has been developed and will be live on durham.ca as of next week. We encourage you to visit this site to learn about the community initiatives, explore the region's history, and progress through all of the historical photos that are there. Thank you very much to the staff in the Community Growth and Economic Development Division, as well as the Communications and Engagement team for their support in creating this long-lasting initiative. And I'll just introduce the next slide before I click in case the video starts right away. But we also did a bit of a tribute to staff. Throughout the 50 years, got a chance to talk to staff across the organization about all of the amazing work that they do and how proud they are to share that with the community. And so we'll just share a quick video that showcases, I think, some of their excitement and thanks to them for their work. Here we go.
The Regional Municipality of Durham is proudly celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. As we reflect on this journey, we invite you to join us in celebrating the vibrant community we call home. We want to thank our remarkable staff. Your commitment, hard work, and professional service have shaped our community. Our dedicated staff work tirelessly to make a positive impact in Durham Region every day. From keeping our community safe, to making sure our environment is clean and protected, and every service in between. It's the stories of our community that inspire us. Together, we've made Durham better for everyone. Discover how we collaborate, innovate, and lead to build a stronger, inclusive, more vibrant community for everyone. Thank you, Durham, for being our compass and inspiration. Connect with us to be a part of the next 50 years of awesome. Share your stories, join our events, and let's keep making a difference together. Explore our history and services at durham.ca/50 years.
And that's it for me. Thanks very much to the organizing committee and for all the staff who participated in the events this year.
Questions, members of council? Seeing none, I will say that it was a great pleasure to entertain those 2 young ladies. I'm looking forward to both of them serving as chair probably in 30 years. Members of council, that takes us to Sandra Austin, Executive Director, Strategic Initiatives Division, and Leslie Ann Folds, Manager of Corporate Initiatives and Strategic Initiatives Division of the CAO's office. And I'll have our CAO do the introduction, please.
Thank you, Chair Henry and members of Council. I'm very pleased to introduce this item on behalf of the Strategic Plan Advisory Group and staff. Over the last year and a half, Regional Councillor Watton and Regional Councillor Crawford represented Council alongside Commissioner Bridgman and Dr. Kyle and myself as staff representatives to champion the development of Durham Region Strategic Plan. Thank you to this team for your guidance and leadership as we develop the plan, and I think there's been lots of opportunities for members of council to get involved, so I think you'll agree we have an excellent direction laid out for the next 10 years. In the fall of last year, we presented the draft plan to council and shared it with community for input. Today, the project team will present Durham Region's 2025 to 2035 strategic plan for council's final endorsement. I will now turn it over to Sandra Austin, the Executive Director of Strategic Initiatives, and Leslie Ann Folds, Manager of Corporate Initiatives, and I thank them for the work that they and their team did in pulling this together and for the very creative approach we've taken throughout the process to get to where we are today. Over to you, Sandra.
Thanks very much, Elaine, and I'll just start talking while oh, there we go. I knew the slides were coming. Thanks very much, Roger. So we're very pleased to share with you today that we are now in our last step in the process to develop the Regional 2025 Strategic Plan. So today we're going to present you with that 10-year plan for Durham Region for your final review and endorsement. So since our last update in October, staff planned and implemented a variety of additional engagement activities, which are shown here on this slide. And so the purpose was to share the draft strategic plan with the community, gather any additional input beyond the year of engagement that we undertook throughout the development of the plan. And so I'm just going to highlight a couple of the key engagements on the next few slides. On October 4th, a memo from the CAO and the draft strategic plan was included in your October 4 CIP, Council Information Package. Council was asked to review the draft plan and provide their feedback. We also presented to this Committee of the Whole on October 9th, and there was an opportunity to promote the draft strategic plan and opportunities to review and provide additional feedback. Between October 4th and the 27th, the community was then invited to review the draft plan and provide additional comments. We tracked a total of 845 web visits to the project page during this time. We also met with local area municipal staff to review the draft plan and provide feedback, to identify and discuss areas of alignment to all of your local municipal strategic plans and strategies. We did have a total of 5 municipal staff who attended the session, representing Ajax, Pickering, Uxbridge, and Whitby. Thank you very much. And in October, most of you attended one of the 3 strategic plan open houses. This was an opportunity for the community to walk through the draft strategic plan, to ask questions, and to provide comments directly to staff. As a result, we had close to an additional 200 discussions with residents and obtained and recorded about 35 additional comments. Since I did receive a question this morning about changes that were made based on that additional public review, I will elaborate briefly that there were some revisions to the wording in the strategic directions. Detail was also added to highlight digital connectivity and access to information and resources. And a new pathway was added to address fiscal responsibility. Finally, nonprofit organizations asked that they be specifically reflected in the plan, and so that reference has been added. In addition, the team completed a number of internal engagements with staff here at the region to share the draft plan, and I'll now turn it over to Leslie Ann Folds to share the results of these engagement efforts. Leslie?
Thanks, Sandra. So the draft was presented, as Sandra mentioned, to the community. The survey was open for the majority of October 2024. There were 104 surveys completed, and the survey responses were both quantitative and qualitative. So people got to rank how they felt about the plan, as well as provide written feedback on it. And just a note again that this was in addition to the March 2024 engagement that we did to develop the plan, which we received over 2,100 responses to that survey. This was a secondary survey to that. The survey was 3 questions long. It included an opportunity, as I said, to provide both written and ranked feedback. Summarized here are the results of the quantitative questions. So 87% of the respondents to the survey strongly agreed or agreed with the vision statement that we put forward for the region. All the strategic directions scored between 92 and 83% of respondents saying they strongly agreed or agreed that the directions reflected their vision for the future of the region. And all the values scored between 97 and 87% of respondents saying they were very important or somewhat important that the region acts with these values. So these are very positive scores for public opinion. So I'll now share with you the highlights of the final strategic plan before you today for endorsement. The plan reflects what we heard from community members through the engagement phase and the public review phase, and it's supported by staff expertise. We hope that it will act as a compass to advance our work over the next 10 years as council and staff. Together, along with partners, businesses, and community members, we'll work towards achieving the future that we want to create in Durham Region. The plan is structured in the following way. The vision statement, strategic directions, and pathways are presented together to share that community vision for the future. The mission statement, corporate values, and the corporate implementation plans are then presented together as the specific commitments that will be made by the Region of Durham as an organization to advance those strategic directions and pathways in the plan. This slide shows an overview of the entire plan, beginning with the community vision, connected communities connected to you, representing a future where Durham Region is made up of connected, caring, and welcoming communities that respect the natural environment and create prosperity for all. Under the vision statement, there are then 5 strategic directions. Each strategic direction contains pathways that outline the high-level areas of action that will move us towards achieving that community vision. There are a total of 29 pathways in this plan. The implementation of those strategic directions and pathways is supported by a foundation of people, processes, and technology. I'll now provide you with an overview of each of the 5 strategic directions. Connected and vibrant communities. Together, we will create connected and vibrant communities that take a proactive and responsible approach to growth and infrastructure. The physical spaces around us will be more connected and safe to make people's days in Durham Region better. Durham Region will be more inclusive and welcoming, with an opportunity for all to find connection and community. Environmental sustainability and climate action. We recognize the unique natural environment in Durham Region and will continue to respect green spaces, waterways, and agricultural lands. Together, we will transition to low-carbon solutions, sustainable living practices, and make the necessary adaptations to withstand the impacts of severe weather. Healthy people and caring communities. Durham Region will offer programs and services that meet the needs of the growing and changing communities across the region. We will continue to promote health and well-being and are committed to caring for those who are most in need. We will strive to improve the quality of life for all residents in the region. Resilient local economies. Durham Region will be a place of opportunity where people can gain new skills, grow, and prosper. We will continue to support current industries, including agriculture, and develop emerging economic sectors. Local business growth and tourism will continue to create a vibrant economy, highlighting the distinct cultural identities across the region. And strong relationships. In Durham Region, people will feel engaged and involved in their communities. Through open collaboration, dialogue, and partnerships, we will build trust and work to advance the community vision for the future of Durham Region. Underpinning those 5 strategic directions, I mentioned this foundation of people, processes, and technology. So this is what, as an organization, will help us implement the strategic plan. In the people category, this is really about making the region of Durham a great place to work, attracting and retaining talent. In the processes category, we're talking about continuously improving processes to ensure we stay responsive to community needs. And in the technology space, we would like to keep pace with technological change to ensure efficient and effective service delivery. Our corporate mission as an organization will be working together to serve diverse and growing communities by providing equitable, sustainable, and integrated services that improve people's lives. And finally, through our actions, we will demonstrate that we are accountable, caring, collaborative, inclusive, and innovative. I'll now turn it back to Sandra to close the presentation.
Thanks very much, Leslie. And so the region will continue to provide updates to the community and share how we are advancing the strategic directions and the pathways within the plan. And we will continue to share our progress on the publicly available community dashboard. As our next steps, we'll update the dashboard and bring forward the community indicators for the new strategic plan. Pending endorsement of the plan, we will then develop the first supporting implementation plan. So again, thanks very much for your time, your attention, all of your engagement throughout the development of this plan, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you, and we do have questions, so Mayor Watt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll just qualify. I don't really have a question, having sat on this committee, but I just want to say thank you to everyone that participated, to Sandra and Leslie and our CAO for their guidance as we work through it. If I consider the video that we heard earlier from Faith, I think this strategic plan addresses all her vision. And so I'm quite excited about it, and I do hope that we can move forward with endorsement today. Thank you.
Any other questions, member of council? Seeing none, awesome job. Thank you for all your efforts and to the team.
Thank you.
Members of council, we have no delegations, we have no correspondence, but we do have 3 reports we need to deal with. First report is Government Relations 2024 update and 2025 priorities. The recommendation is that the Committee of the Whole recommends that this be received for information. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Shahid, second by Councillor Garrard. The item's now on the floor. Comments or questions? Councillor Pickles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to have this report in front of us, and unless I missed something, and I just wanted to check that in the 2024 priorities, we had the BRT in there that we spoke of earlier, but I didn't see it in the 2025 priorities. And we had a discussion about the lack of provincial funding or direction from the province to Metrolinx to continue participating in and provide funding for the further phases that needed advanced in that project. So can I just get clarity perhaps on whether the BRT next stages are in our 2025 priorities for government relations or not?
I'll go to Allison.
Sure, yes, thank you, good question. So our advocacy in 2024 was centered around trying to find a funding mechanism, and that came through the Canadian Public Transit Fund, the federal fund. For just a quick summary, a portion of that fund will fund through MTO. MTO will then, and Metrolinx will then sort out how that fund gets distributed based on their regional transportation plan. The BRT is part of that regional transportation plan, so we will be continuing to advocate as long as that fund continues to exist. There are some potential changes. If there is a change of government, we'll have to reassess whether that fund is still available. But yes, we will absolutely be advocating for the BRT to be funded through that stream of funding that flows from the feds to the province.
Okay, so although I didn't see it specifically there, you're saying it's included in the broader category, because I do see, Mr. Chair, there's an opportunity. Not only is there a federal election and as some noted, perhaps a change in government, there may be a good chance it's a provincial election as well. And the present government has been very big on funding transit projects, and one would hope would look favorably on providing additional direction to Metrolinx and funding for this project. And I know it's something that we have an opportunity to raise on Advocacy Day down at Queen's Park as well. Our MPP happens to be in Pickering happens to be the Minister of Finance, and his office fronts on to the BRT route along Kingston Road, not far from our own City Hall as well. So I think there's just a good timing opportunity to advocate on behalf of funding for these, advancing the elements of the project that are not presently being addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering to staff, one thing that I did note, and I do appreciate seeing the pressure to extend and accelerate the GO train expansion through Oshawa to Bowmanville. At the same time, the Ministry of Transport is widening and expanding the 401 highway. So I'm just wondering why we aren't pressing in parallel to the GO train an acceleration of the infrastructure changes along the 401 highway, including new bridges, et cetera, and then why that's not included in the mix. I wonder if someone could address that.
I might have to go to my colleagues in Works or Planning for the details, but I do understand that widening of the 401 is in the capital plan. And I think that's what we're looking for with respect to a variety of transportation options across Durham Region and advocating for all avenues to help traffic move, or help people move rather. And our focus really has been on establishing the GO East, which we know this council has been advocating for a very long time. But perhaps I could turn to Ramesh or Brian to speak to the widening of the 401.
Yeah, I think it would be fair to say that all efforts are being made to extend the GO East extension to Bowmanville, and whatever widening and trackage and all those things are needed to do in concert with 401 widening is certainly taking place.
Councillor Nicholson.
Well, yes, and I do appreciate that. I see the 401 widening, the bridge replacements, the new intersections as a parallel project to the GO train, because one isn't going to be able to operate efficiently without the other. So I just hope as we do our lobbying, as Strategic Core reaches out to whatever government the day is, that we remind them that the earliest possible completion of both will serve Durham Region well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to this item? Seeing none on my screen, I'll call the vote on the receive for information. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. We'll move on to 7.2, Durham Region's Strategic Plan. The recommendation is on page 92 of your agenda. It's a recommendation to council. Looking for a mover. Councillor Shahid, looking for a seconder. Councillor McDougall. The report's now on the floor. Questions? Mr. Clerk, online? Seeing none, then I will call the vote on the recommendation. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none. We've done 7.3, and now we're on to 7.4. It's an update on the Durham Region, Durham Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit study. The report is a receive for information report. Could I get a mover? Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The report is now on the floor. I seeing no questions. Mr. Clerk, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Members of council, there are no motions today. There are no confidential matters. Mayor Ash, could I get a motion to adjourn, please? And I'm looking for a seconder, Councillor Yamada, on adjournment. Call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to all, and enjoy the rest of your day.